My name's Evan, and I'm 28 years old. I'm the kind of guy who's always been told, family comes first. Maybe it was the way mom raised us after dad left, or maybe it's just something I clung to because it made life feel a little less cold. Whatever the reason, for as long as I can remember, I've been the one picking up the pieces whenever my younger brother, Sean, tore things apart. He's 26, old enough to know better, too young to care. Sean's always been. A lot. He's the golden boy when things are good, the ghost when things fall apart. And I guess I was the idiot who thought if I just gave enough, supported enough, loved enough, he'd eventually grow out of it. It started small, the way these things always do. Hey man, I'm short on rent. Just this once text. A desperate call because he forgot about his credit card bill and his account got frozen. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself everyone struggles a little in their 20s. But months turned into a year, and the amounts got bigger. $200 here, $600 there, then $1,200 to fix his car. And every time, Sean had the same wide-eyed look of gratitude, promising, swearing this was the last time. I wanted so badly to believe him. It was about 3 days before New Year's Eve when he called again, this time while I was standing in line at the grocery store, arms full of stuff for a quiet little get-together I'd planned with a few friends. His voice was breathless, frantic. His car had been repossessed once before because he fell behind on payments, and he was about to lose it again if he didn't cough up $2,500 immediately. He begged, pleaded, said he'd be stuck without a job if he lost the car, that he was finally getting serious about his life. Against every bit of better judgment I had left, I wired him the money. I didn't even tell anyone. Part of me was embarrassed by how easily I caved. Again, the thing is, when someone shows you who they are, you can ignore it for a while. But eventually, even the thickest rose-colored glasses crack. New Year's Eve came, and Sean said he was heading to a party a few towns over. I assumed he'd be busy doing his usual, getting drunk, making promises he wouldn't remember in the morning. I stayed home with a couple close friends. We ate way too much junk food, played board games, and counted down the clock like kids. It was nice, peaceful in a way my life hadn't been for a while. I even started letting myself hope maybe this year would be different. Maybe 2025 would finally be the year I stopped feeling like I was dragging my brother behind me everywhere I went. Then, right as the ball dropped, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sean. "You're just a burden. Stay away." That was it. No explanation. No apology. No nothing. Just 7 words that hit harder than any punch ever could. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe he was drunk. Maybe he meant to text someone else. I stared at the screen for a long minute, blinking, rereading it like the words would change if I just looked hard enough. But they didn't. Then the group chat lit up, photos of Sean, grinning ear to ear, raising a glass with a few of his party buddies. One of them captioned the photo, "Freedom from leeches." #New Year New Me. There was Sean, front and center, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. Like the thousands of dollars I'd scraped together to keep his life afloat meant absolutely nothing. Like I meant absolutely nothing. I didn't say anything. I didn't respond. I didn't call him, or scream, or send a long, angry text. I just sat there, letting the cold, hollow feeling settle in. My friends must have noticed the shift, but I brushed it off, forcing a smile and claiming I was just tired. Inside, though, something hard and sharp started to form where that soft hope used to be. I barely slept that night. My mind kept replaying every time I'd bailed him out, every time I'd stood between him and the consequences he should have faced. And every time, he'd smiled, patted me on the back, and gone right back to wrecking things. I realized then that I hadn't been helping him all these years. I'd been enabling him. I wasn't his brother in his eyes. I was a crutch, a wallet, a fool. By the time morning came, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The first thing I did was open up my laptop and pull up the payment history for Sean's car loan. It didn't take long to find the document with my name on it, because of course, when he was desperate and the dealership didn't trust his credit score, he begged me to co-sign. I was still technically the primary owner of that car. Sean didn't even read the fine print when he got the keys. He just wanted to show off his shiny new toy to his friends. I pulled up the bank statements next, the ones that showed how many payments had come out of my account temporarily while Sean got back on his feet. Temporary had turned into permanent pretty quick, and like an idiot, I'd let it happen. But the best part? Sean had missed so many payments in the past that there was already a tow order sitting on standby for any further delinquency. And he was 2 days overdue, again. One phone call was all it would take. I made it around 8:30 a.m., before he even had a chance to drag himself out of whatever stranger's house he'd passed out in. The towing company remembered the case immediately and said they'd be happy to expedite the pickup. I just needed to confirm I was the registered owner. I smiled. Oh, I'm definitely the owner. By 9:45 a.m., I was parked in my car across the street from Sean's place, sipping a coffee and watching the tow truck back into his driveway. Sean's car, a flashy little red Mustang he couldn't afford even on his best days, was still there, crookedly parked like he'd stumbled out of it last night without a second thought. The driver hopped out, hooked it up with a professional quickness, and within 5 minutes, that Mustang was off the ground, swinging slightly as the tow truck driver locked everything into place. As he drove off, I caught sight of Sean's front door creaking open. He was shirtless, barefoot, his hair a wild mess. He squinted against the morning sun, clearly trying to process what he was seeing. For a moment, he just stood there, frozen. Then he bolted toward the street, waving his arms and shouting something I couldn't hear from my car. The tow truck didn't even slow down. I rolled down my window just enough to hear the last echo of Sean's voice yelling down the street. High, panicked, and so confused. And then my phone buzzed. Incoming call, Sean. I watched it ring. Let it ring again. And then again. And when it finally went to voicemail, my screen lit up with his first text of the morning. Dude, where's my car? I set the phone face down on the passenger seat and leaned back, letting the warmth of the sun cut through the chilly morning air. For the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel like the one carrying dead weight. I wasn't finished, though. Not by a long shot. Because Sean's car was just the beginning, and the real storm was still on the way. I sat there for a few more minutes, just letting the feeling sink in. It wasn't happiness, exactly. It was calmer than that. Like standing at the edge of a field after a fire's burned everything down, charred, empty, but free. A fresh start. My hands didn't shake anymore. My heart didn't pound. For the first time in years, I wasn't scrambling to fix Sean's latest disaster. I wasn't sprinting to catch pieces of a mess he made and left for me to clean. I was finally letting it all crash the way it needed to. When I got home, the real fallout began. Sean blew up my phone. 6 missed calls, then 12, then 19. A stream of texts came flooding in, starting with confused panic, spiraling into anger, and then rounding the corner into full-on rage. What did you do? Answer me. This isn't funny. I'm calling the cops. That one made me laugh. He could try. The title and the paperwork were all in my name. As far as the law was concerned, Sean had been borrowing my car for months and not paying for it. If anything, I was doing exactly what I had every right to do. Still, Sean wasn't the type to let facts slow him down. By noon, he was pounding on my apartment door. I didn't answer. I just sat at my kitchen table, eating a sandwich, listening to the muffled thuds of his fist against the wood, the occasional yell of, "Open up," and "You're ruining my life," drifting through. I could picture him perfectly, hair wild, eyes bloodshot, pacing like a trapped animal, blaming everyone but himself. Eventually, when it became clear I wasn't coming to the door, he switched tactics. He slid a note under the door. I didn't even pick it up for an hour. When I finally did, it was just one line, scribbled angrily in black marker. "You'll be sorry." Classic Sean. Always making threats when he couldn't win an argument. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led up to this moment. Years of bending. Years of swallowing anger and disappointment. Years of telling myself he'd change if I just hung on a little longer. I thought about the times I paid his rent so he wouldn't get evicted, while I ate ramen noodles for dinner. The time I sold my gaming console, my one real outlet, to cover his utility bill because he'd blown his paycheck at a casino. The birthday gifts that were on the way, but never arrived. The times he promised to pay me back next week, but next week always became next month, and next month always became never. And worst of all, I thought about the way he smiled when things were good, all charm and bright teeth and backslaps, until the moment he decided I was a burden. A leech. Disposable. I wasn't disposable anymore. I didn't block his number. I didn't need to. Ignoring him was so much sweeter. Letting him scream into the void while I moved on with my life was a quiet kind of revenge that tasted better than anything loud or messy. The next day, I called the bank about the account I'd let him use, the one I had stupidly kept open so he could start saving under my guidance. Surprise, surprise, it was overdrawn. Again, not anymore. I closed the account while I was on my lunch break. I also canceled the credit card he had a secondary user slot on, one he swore he never used but somehow racked up $1,200 in Uber Eats and bar tabs. I paid off the remainder myself, canceled it, and removed every single link between us financially. It felt like cutting the last rotten rope off a sinking ship. Then came the final piece. Remember that $2,500 I sent him just before New Year's? Yeah, that was a wire transfer through my bank, and because Sean had agreed, via text, to repay it as a loan, I had the receipts to prove it wasn't a gift. I filed a small claims case that same afternoon. I didn't expect to get the money back. Sean didn't have 2 pennies to rub together, but I didn't care. I wanted it on record. I wanted him to get served. I wanted the paper trail to exist, following him around like a bad smell. By the time the court date rolled around, I imagined him trying to explain to a judge how the burden he toasted his freedom from somehow still managed to take him down with a few well-placed signatures. But I wasn't done yet. I started going through everything. Every payment, every favor, every receipt, every email. I documented it all neatly, calmly, like an accountant balancing a ledger after a long, messy year. It was exhausting, yeah, emotional. There were nights I sat up too late, wondering if maybe I'd gone too far. Maybe I should just let it go. But then I remembered how Sean looked at me in those photos, grinning, raising a glass, laughing with his friends as he toasted to being free of me. Free of the guy who kept his lights on. Free of the guy who put gas in his tank. Free of the guy who fought his battles when he was too weak or lazy to fight them himself. He didn't want me? Fine. I was done. The last piece, the piece that would really bring it all crashing down, fell into place a few days later when I got a very interesting piece of mail. It was a notice about Sean's insurance policy, the one that had been bundled with mine because I'd been trying to get him a lower rate. His policy was canceled. Non-payment. I knew Sean couldn't afford his own insurance. I also knew he probably hadn't even noticed yet. But he would. Especially when he found out that driving without insurance wasn't just a slap on the wrist in our state. It meant hefty fines, possible license suspension, and if he got pulled over or into any kind of accident, well, let's just say it wouldn't be pretty. I sat there on my couch, turning the envelope over in my hands, feeling the weight of it. It wasn't gloating. It wasn't even joy. It was relief. Relief that I didn't have to carry it anymore. Relief that Sean was finally going to face consequences, real ones, for the first time in his life. And when the fallout finally hit, it was going to be spectacular. But first, I just had to wait. Wait for the next call. The next desperate knock at my door. The next text begging for help. And when it came, I'd be ready. It didn't take long. 3 days later, a little before noon, my phone lit up with Sean's name again. I didn't answer. I just watched it ring, the familiar knot of guilt that used to tighten in my stomach feeling looser, smaller now. A minute later, a text popped up. Bro, seriously, I need your help. I set the phone down, face up this time, and went back to my coffee, letting him stew. Letting him realize that the bridge he burned wasn't going to magically rebuild itself. Another minute passed. Please, man. I'm stuck. Got pulled over. No insurance. They're talking about towing again. I swear I'll pay you back. Come on. I almost laughed. Almost. The irony was just too perfect. He didn't even realize that there was no car for him to get towed anymore. The Mustang was long gone. The loan company had already put it up for auction 2 states away. As for his license, if they were checking his record properly, they'd see the outstanding violations he had racked up under my insurance umbrella without paying a dime. The kind of mess that doesn't just go away with a few apologies. Another text came in. Please, bro. I'm begging you. I'd care what to do. That's when it hit me. The desperation wasn't fake anymore. This wasn't one of Sean's usual crocodile tears, the ones he trotted out whenever he needed money or sympathy. This was real. Raw. Ugly. I should have felt bad. Maybe once, a long time ago, I would have. But all I felt was a grim sort of satisfaction, the kind that comes after years of being ignored, used, and tossed aside finally turn into a weight lifted off your chest. Another call. Another voicemail. This time, he left one. I didn't open it at first. I just sat there for a while, staring out the window, watching the clouds roll by in slow, heavy clumps. The world felt different now. Quieter. Like I was no longer bracing for the next crisis to crash through my door. When I finally played the voicemail, Sean's voice sounded small. Defeated. Evan, man, please. I'm serious. They're saying I can't drive the car. They're saying they're gonna tow it. I don't have anybody else. I swear I'll figure out a way to pay you back. Please, just this one last time. I know I messed up. I know I shouldn't have said those things. Just please, don't leave me like this. I'm sorry." There it was. The apology I had waited for all these years. And it meant absolutely nothing. Because it wasn't real. It wasn't because he understood what he did. It wasn't because he realized how deeply he had hurt me. It was because he needed something. Again. Always. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled up the app from my bank account, the fresh, clean one I'd opened a few days ago, and stared at the balance. Untouched. Secure. Mine. It felt like a symbol. A tiny, tangible sign that I had finally put myself first. That I wasn't the family ATM anymore. That Sean's mistakes weren't mine to fix. Later that night, out of pure curiosity, I checked his social media. I shouldn't have, but I did. And there he was, posting from the side of the road. A blurry, angry selfie with flashing police lights in the background. Some people only care when they need something. Guess I'm better off without fake family. #betrayed. #lesson learned. The comments were brutal. Most were from his party buddies, who didn't know half the story but loved a chance to pile on. Some sympathetic, most just making jokes about getting wrecked or starting 2025 right by getting arrested. A few mutual friends commented, asking if he was okay. I didn't comment. I didn't like the post. I didn't even feel tempted to. Because Sean was right, in a way. He was better off without fake family. And so was I. The next morning, I woke up to a quiet apartment. No frantic texts. No missed calls. Just sunlight filtering through the blinds and the slow, steady hum of a life finally becoming mine again. I went for a walk around the neighborhood, breathing in the crisp January air, feeling lighter than I had in years. No more waiting for the next explosion. No more trying to fix someone who didn't want to be fixed. When I got back home, there was one more message from Sean waiting. It wasn't angry this time. It wasn't desperate. It was just 2 words. "I'm sorry." I didn't reply to Sean's apology. I didn't even open the message again after the first time. There was nothing left to say. It wasn't that I hated him. Hate would have been easier, honestly. Hate at least implies you still care, still feel something sharp and alive. What I felt now was distance. Like looking at an old photo of a life I barely recognized anymore. Over the next few weeks, Sean went silent. No texts. No calls. No sudden visits. I didn't know if he had finally gotten the hint or if life had just swallowed him whole for a while. Either way, I didn't chase him. I didn't check up. I focused on my own life for once. It was almost startling how quickly things started to change when I did. I started going back to the gym, not for anyone else, not to prove anything, just for me. I reconnected with old friends I'd slowly drifted from over the years, friends who had quietly slipped away because they were tired of watching me be used like a doormat. I even started picking up extra shifts at work, not because I needed the money to cover someone else's mess, but because I had goals of my own now. Things I wanted to save for. Places I wanted to travel to. My world grew larger while Sean's, I imagined, shrank. About 2 months after that chaotic New Year's Eve, I ran into an old mutual friend of ours, someone who used to know Sean well. His name was Nate, and we crossed paths at a local coffee shop one Saturday afternoon. We made the usual small talk, the awkward dance of 2 people who shared too much history and not enough recent connection. Eventually, though, Nate brought up Sean. "So, you talked to your brother lately?" he asked, stirring his coffee without looking up. "Nope," I said simply. He glanced up at me then, like he wasn't sure how much I wanted to know. "He's, not doing so great, man." I shrugged. "Not really my problem anymore." Nate nodded slowly. "Yeah, I figured. Just thought you should know. He's living with some girl now, barely scraping by. Lost his job a few weeks ago. Word is he's behind on rent already." I didn't say anything. What was there to say? This was always where Sean's road was leading. The only thing that had ever delayed it before was me standing in the way, patching up every pothole he stumbled into. Nate hesitated, then added, He's been telling people you abandoned him, that you left him homeless." I laughed under my breath, not even bitter, just tired. "Sounds about right." "You're not mad." "No," I said truthfully. "I'm just done." There was a kind of peace in saying it out loud. Nate clapped me on the shoulder awkwardly, like he didn't quite know how to handle the conversation, and we parted ways after that. Later that night, I thought about Sean's version of the story, how he twisted things to make himself the victim, how he probably painted me as the cruel, ungrateful brother who kicked him when he was down. It used to matter to me what people thought. It used to eat me alive. Not anymore. I knew the truth. And the people who mattered would know it too if they cared enough to find out. Spring crept in slowly that year. The cold gray skies gave way to crisp blue mornings, the kind that make you want to roll the windows down and drive with no destination. I started doing that sometimes, just getting in the car, picking a direction, and going. One Saturday, I ended up at the edge of a small town about 40 minutes from the city. There was a tiny bookstore tucked between a bakery and a secondhand clothing shop. I wandered in on a whim and ended up spending 2 hours there, flipping through old paperbacks, chatting with the owner about favorite authors. I bought a few books, a couple of mugs, a handmade journal. It was such a small thing. A Saturday spent exactly how I wanted, with no obligations, no frantic calls, no looming crises. And yet, it felt like the biggest victory of my life. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. Real mail, not email or texts. I recognized the handwriting immediately, messy, a little rushed. Sean. I almost threw it away unopened. Almost. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Evan, I know you probably don't care anymore, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I was selfish. I took advantage of you. I told myself it wasn't that bad because you were my brother, and that's what brothers are supposed to do. I realize now how much I hurt you. How much I used you. I'm sorry. You were the only person who ever really tried to help me. I see that now. And I ruined it. I'm trying to get better. I don't expect you to believe me. I just needed you to know. Thank you for everything you did, even if I didn't deserve it. Sean. I sat there with the letter for a long time, turning it over in my hands. It was more genuine than anything he had ever said to me before. More honest. And maybe, just maybe, he meant it this time. But I didn't write back. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. Out of understanding. Some chapters in life aren't meant to be reopened. Some bridges stay burned, not because of hate, but because rebuilding them would only lead back to the same hurt, the same cycle. Forgiveness doesn't always mean letting someone back into your life. Sometimes it just means wishing them well, from a distance. I folded the letter neatly, placed it in a drawer, and went about my day. And when summer finally arrived, bringing long evenings and warm golden light, I realized something beautiful. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living. And I wasn't carrying anyone else's weight but my own. My name's Noah, I'm 27, and I've always been the quiet one in the family. Not shy, just observant. The one who stays behind after dinner to help with the dishes while the others are already on their third glass of wine in the living room. The one who never makes a scene, never raises his voice. The one who everyone forgets to include in group photos. And if anyone ever did remember me, it was usually followed by a condescending smile or a passive-aggressive joke about how low maintenance I was. My family, especially my cousins, never really saw me as part of the pack. More like a stray that grandma insisted on feeding. Growing up, my cousin Alex was the golden boy. He could do no wrong in the eyes of my aunt and uncle. Always the loudest in the room, always center of attention. Then there was Marissa, his younger sister, who followed his lead like a shadow. If Alex rolled his eyes at me, she laughed. If he ignored me at family parties, she made sure others did too. I wasn't bullied exactly, but I was dismissed, constantly made to feel like I didn't matter. And the one person who always made sure I knew I did matter was Grandma Evelyn. She wasn't flashy or loud. She was gentle, thoughtful. She kept hard candies in every pocket and knew how to make every grandchild feel special. Well, everyone except Alex and Marissa. I don't think they ever noticed how Grandma always asked me to help her with her garden, or how she'd save a slice of my favorite peach pie for me even when I arrived late to dinners. She and I had this quiet bond, built on unspoken understanding. I used to help her set up her iPad, and she'd sit beside me with a cup of tea, smiling like I was the most fascinating person in the world. When I moved out at 19 to start a small graphic design business, she was the only one who took it seriously. Everyone else called it a hobby, even after I landed my first major client. Grandma, though, she framed one of my posters and hung it in her hallway. When she passed, it felt like the ground shifted beneath me. It wasn't just grief. It was this deep, hollow ache that made everything else in life feel off. Like the one person who actually saw me was gone. The funeral was set for a Thursday morning, in the town where Grandma had lived for over 40 years. I took the week off work, booked a nearby Airbnb, and packed my best suit. The same one I wore to my first gallery opening. The one Grandma had flown 2 hours to attend even though she hated airports. I got there early, like always, expecting things to be a little chaotic. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. I was standing outside the funeral home when the limo pulled up. It was sleek, black, the kind that whispers wealth. I watched as Alex stepped out first, looking like he'd just come from a board meeting. Sharp jawline, perfect hair, crisp navy suit. Marissa followed, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue that I'm pretty sure was more for show than anything else. A few other family members trailed behind. My aunt, my uncle, even my dad, who had divorced my mom years ago and only resurfaced for big family events. I waved. No one waved back. Then I noticed there was one spot left in the limo. Just one. Alex glanced at me, then turned to Marissa and muttered something. She smirked. I took a step forward. Is there room? Alex didn't even flinch. There's no room in the limo, he said casually, already climbing back inside. You should probably just grab an Uber or something. And just like that, the door shut. They drove off, without so much as a backward glance. I stood there for a few seconds, my hand still half raised, like I hadn't quite accepted what had just happened. My first instinct was to laugh, because really, who does that? Who leaves someone standing outside their own grandmother's funeral? But the laughter never came. Instead, I just lowered my arm, pulled out my phone, and ordered a ride. The driver arrived in 5 minutes. He didn't say much. I didn't either. Just stared out the window, letting the silence wrap around me like a cold wind. I arrived 20 minutes late. The service had already started. I slipped in quietly through the back, not making a sound. I didn't need to sit in the front row or even near the family. I just wanted to be there, to say goodbye. But even from where I sat, I could see the smug glances my cousins exchanged when they noticed me walking in alone. Marissa actually leaned over and whispered something to Alex that made him smirk. I didn't respond. I didn't even look at them. I just kept my eyes forward, hands folded, jaw tight. I said my silent goodbye. I thanked Grandma for every kind word, every soft hug, every time she made me feel like I wasn't invisible. And then I left. That evening, I skipped the family reception. No one texted to ask where I was. Not that I expected them to. I ordered takeout back at the Airbnb, watched one of Grandma's favorite movies on my laptop, The Sound of Music, and stared at the glowing screen long after the credits rolled. I thought about the will, which was scheduled to be read a few days later at Grandma's attorney's office. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe a small keepsake, a letter, maybe even nothing. Just something to hold on to. A part of her. But what happened at that meeting? It changed everything. The reading of the will was scheduled for Monday morning, 3 days after the funeral. The attorney's office was in this old building downtown with worn red brick and gold-lettered signage that looked like it hadn't changed since the 70s. I got there early, again, and waited on the leather bench in the hallway, scrolling through old photos of Grandma on my phone. Most were from random Sundays at her house, her in her sun hat, holding a tray of lemonade or laughing while pointing at something out of frame. It hit me all over again that she was really gone. Around 10:03, the rest of the family arrived, late as always. They came in loud, laughing, chatting, like they were meeting for brunch instead of their mothers while reading. Alex strolled in first, wearing aviator sunglasses indoors and talking on his phone about some crazy deal at work. Marissa trailed behind, fiddling with her nails, and their parents, my aunt and uncle, looked as smug and relaxed as ever. My dad was there too, nodding politely to everyone, though I could tell he felt just as out of place as I did. When they saw me, the talking dulled for a second. Just a second. Then it picked up again, as if I were just another piece of old furniture in the room. Didn't know you were invited, Marissa muttered as she passed me, not even bothering to make eye contact. I didn't answer. I just gave a small nod, like I hadn't heard her, and went back to my phone. But my heart was thudding in my chest. The attorney, Mr. Langley, opened the door and motioned us in. The room was small and lined with dusty law books. A long wooden table sat in the center with folders neatly stacked, a pitcher of water, and a few glasses. We all took our seats, me at the far end, near the window. Mr. Langley was an older gentleman with a slow, deliberate way of speaking. Thank you all for coming. Evelyn's final wishes were very specific, and I intend to honor them exactly as written. He opened a manila folder and began reading. The first part was standard. A few donations to charities she'd supported. Her church, a small scholarship fund for young women studying horticulture. Then it turned personal. To my daughter Helen, Mr. Langley read, referring to my aunt. I leave my collection of antique teacups and the china cabinet they're housed in. Helen looked disappointed. Just the teacups? She whispered. To my son George, my dad. I leave the bronze clock from the fireplace mantel and my collection of first edition mystery novels. Dad blinked, surprised. Wow, she knew I loved those. To my grandson Alexander, Mr. Langley continued. I leave the contents of the wine cellar and my gardening tools. Alex sat back with a faint chuckle. The wine cellar? Nice. Grandma always had good taste. To my granddaughter Marissa, I leave my jewelry box and the costume jewelry inside. Marissa blinked. Wait, just costume jewelry? That's got to be a mistake. Mr. Langley didn't respond. He just turned the page. Then he looked up, directly at me. For the first time, the room got quiet. And to my grandson Noah, he paused. I leave the house, all its contents, the remaining savings in my personal account, and full ownership of my stake in the floral business I helped co-found in 1978. The silence that followed was deafening. Alex's jaw dropped. Marissa audibly gasped. My aunt looked like someone had slapped her across the face. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My ears were ringing. What? Alex muttered. That can't be right. Mr. Langley adjusted his glasses. It is. I was present when she wrote it, and a witness as she signed it. Marissa's voice shot up an octave. You're telling me he gets the house? He gets the savings? What about the antiques? The stocks? The actual jewelry? I assure you, Mr. Langley said calmly. This was all intentional. Evelyn was very clear. I could feel the heat of their eyes on me. The tension in the room coiled like a spring. But why him? My aunt snapped, finally breaking the stunned silence. He barely came to family events. He was always off in his little bubble. He's not even close with the rest of us. Mr. Langley glanced at me, then back at the paper. There's a note she asked me to read aloud. Would you all like to hear it? Everyone fell silent again. No one wanted to say yes, but they didn't say no either. Mr. Langley cleared his throat and read. To those who are confused by my choices, the people who showed me love quietly, without fanfare, are the ones who meant the most. This isn't about duty. This is about presence, about kindness, about loyalty that asks for nothing in return. I don't owe anyone an explanation, but I've given one anyway. That last line landed like a punch to the gut. My aunt's face turned a deep shade of red. Alex just shook his head in disbelief, like it couldn't possibly be true. Marissa mumbled something under her breath that I couldn't quite catch. I stayed silent. No gloating. No smug look. I just sat there, staring out the window. It should have ended there. But of course it didn't. Because some people, when they lose control, they scramble to get it back. Over the next few days, the masks started slipping. The text came first. From Marissa. Hey. So obviously things were a bit tense at the will reading. Just wanted to say no hard feelings, smiley face. If you ever want to do brunch, I'm free this week. Then my aunt. We should talk. About the house. You're young. You probably don't want to be burdened with all the maintenance. Maybe we could help take it off your hands. Even Alex tried. Hey man, no idea why Grandma did that, but it's cool. If you're thinking of selling, let me know. I've got some connections. I didn't respond to any of them, but they didn't take silence as an answer. That's when the manipulation started. They came to the house uninvited, under the guise of helping clean up. Marissa claimed she was there to organize Grandma's jewelry, even though most of it was already gone. Alex walked into the wine cellar like it belonged to him. My aunt started boxing up furniture without asking me a thing. When I told them they needed to stop, politely, at first, they acted confused. Hurt, like I was the one being unreasonable. I just thought you wouldn't mind, my aunt said, arms crossed. It's not like you were ever close to the family. Alex added, you really gonna keep all this stuff for yourself? Doesn't feel very Grandma Evelyn, if you ask me. And for the first time in my life, I looked him square in the eyes and didn't look away. I could feel something shifting inside me. Something slow, heavy, not anger, something colder. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. But I did start locking the doors. What they didn't realize was that Grandma left me more than just her house. She left me something they didn't even know existed. And once I understood what it was, the plan started forming. Quietly, just like everything else I'd ever done. And when I was ready, They were going to feel everything they'd made me swallow for the last 20 years. The next few weeks were tense, but manageable, until the betrayal hit me square in the chest like a brick I never saw coming. I kept my distance from them, like always. After the will reading, I'd made it clear, without saying a word, that the house, the assets, everything Grandma left me, it wasn't up for discussion. I didn't flaunt anything. I didn't change the locks with a flourish or parade around like I'd won something. I just quietly lived in the house, tended to Grandma's plants, updated a few things in the living room, and worked remotely from her sunroom, which overlooked the garden I used to help her with as a kid. But behind my back, the whispering had started. It began subtly. I got a letter from the Homeowners Association, some complaint about unauthorized renovations. Then, my electricity mysteriously got cut off for a day due to a change in billing info. When I called the utility company, they said someone claiming to be the new owner had called in and switched accounts. I had to send in proof that I was the legal owner. They apologized, reinstated my account, and that was that. Or so I thought. Then came the real gut punch. One afternoon, I was working on a branding mock-up for a client when I got a call from the florist company Grandma had co-owned for decades, her pride and joy. The company that still bore her name on the sign, Evelyn and Bloom. She'd left me her stake in the business, something I hadn't even touched yet, since I was still processing everything else. But I was planning to soon. Grandma had always wanted me to use my design skills to help modernize their branding and digital presence, and I was finally getting ready to step in. "Hi, this is Claire," said the voice on the other end. She was the shop's manager. I just wanted to double-check something. We got a call from Helen today, your aunt, and she said you'd decided to give up your shares in the business and pass them back to the family for safekeeping. Said she'd be signing the paperwork soon. I froze. "What?" "She said it was your decision," Claire repeated, sounding hesitant. "She showed us a scanned email from your address. It looked a little odd, honestly. Didn't really sound like you. So I figured I'd just confirm directly." I immediately opened my email. There it was. A sent message, dated 2 days ago, supposedly from me. "To whom it may concern, I, Noah Morgan, hereby relinquish all shares and rights to the Evelyn and Bloom floral business, effective immediately. My Aunt Helen will be acting on my behalf regarding all future matters. Please comply with her instructions as needed. Sincerely, Noah." Except, I didn't write that. I never sent that email. My hands started to tremble. The name on the sent from field looked right, but something about the formatting was off. A closer look revealed it wasn't even my email address, just one that looked similar, with an extra period and a fake domain. Someone had spoofed my identity. "They're trying to steal the business," I whispered, barely believing the words coming out of my own mouth. Claire's voice softened. "I thought it didn't seem like you. I didn't want to make assumptions, but thank you for calling me," I said. "Please don't accept anything from her. I'm going to get this straightened out." I hung up and sat in complete silence for a long, long time. That was it. It wasn't just disrespect anymore. This wasn't about a limo, or being left out of group chats, or smirks behind my back. This was theft. It was identity fraud. It was crossing a line so blatant, so vicious, that it made my stomach turn. My own family had tried to forge my consent to steal what Grandma had trusted me with. Something she built from the ground up. Something she passed on with intention. And the worst part? They probably didn't think I'd fight back. They'd seen me as silent for so long. The kid in the corner. The easy target. The one they could walk over like a doormat and expect a polite nod in return. But that version of me, he died the day they shut that limo door in my face. I forwarded the fake email to a lawyer the next morning. I'd hired one, quietly, right after the will reading, just in case. Mr. Gordon was sharp, no nonsense, and extremely efficient. He didn't blink when I explained what happened. "This is forgery and attempted fraud," he said matter-of-factly. "You have full rights over that stake, and this email stunt is a clear violation. What do? We file a cease and desist. And if they push harder, we escalate. But first, I want you to gather anything else that might help us. Any signs that they've tried to undermine your inheritance. Keep a record. We'll be ready." And just like that, a fire started burning in me. Not rage. Not vengeance. Clarity. They had tried to erase me from Grandma's legacy. They had underestimated the quiet one. And now? Now I was going to make sure that every fake smile, every manipulative scheme, every behind-the-back betrayal would come to light. Not with shouting, not with drama, with precision, with undeniable proof, and with a plan so clean, they wouldn't even see it coming until the very end. Because Grandma didn't raise a fool. She raised a quiet storm, and the storm was just beginning. After that call with the florist and the meeting with my lawyer, I thought I was prepared for anything else they might throw at me. But when people are desperate, when they feel power slipping from their hands, they don't get smarter. They get reckless. The first real blow came the next weekend. It was early Saturday morning, and I was out on the back porch with a mug of coffee, watching the dew roll off the garden leaves. Grandma's garden. It was still full of late blooms, and I'd been keeping it just like she liked it, colorful, soft, quiet. It was the only place that still felt like her. Then my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I normally let those go to voicemail, but something in me said to pick it up. A woman's voice. Shaky. Is this Noah Morgan? Yes. Who's calling? This is Janet from First National Bank. I'm calling to confirm some account activity that flagged our system. We've had multiple attempts to withdraw large sums from an account under your name. We've frozen the account for your protection, but we'll need to verify your identity in person. I blinked, sitting up. Wait, my savings account. Yes, sir. 2 withdrawal attempts within the last 48 hours. One was flagged as unusual. The other nearly went through, but was stopped due to a name mismatch on the signature. My stomach dropped. I barely touched that account. It was Grandma's final savings, the one she left me in the will. I hadn't even used it yet, not a single cent. I haven't authorized any withdrawals, I said slowly. Not one. She gave me a location, one of the local branches, and the name on the attempted withdrawal, Helen Morgan. My aunt. My own flesh and blood had not only tried to steal my business share behind my back, now she was literally trying to drain Grandma's savings, the money she left for me. Not for a joint account, not for the family, for me. I didn't say a word after the call. I didn't throw my mug or scream into a pillow. I just sat there for a long time, until the coffee went cold in my hand and the sun moved higher in the sky. That was the lowest I'd felt in years. Not because of the money, but because I realized, fully realized, that these people, the ones who called themselves family, saw me as nothing more than a resource to be siphoned off until I was dry. And once they were done, they'd move on, probably back to pretending I didn't exist. I wasn't even a person to them, just a will-reading mistake they wanted to correct. I couldn't even bring myself to tell my dad. He hadn't spoken up during the will reading. He hadn't defended me when they barged into Grandma's house or started boxing up furniture. Maybe he didn't know how, or maybe he didn't want to rock the boat. But either way, I didn't have him in my corner. Not really. For a couple of days, I drifted. I didn't leave the house much. I barely ate. I'd sit in Grandma's reading nook at night with her old shawl still draped over the chair, letting the silence settle over me like dust. Everything felt heavy, wrong. But in that silence, something started forming. Not anger, resolve. I stopped looking at them as people I needed approval from. I stopped trying to protect their feelings. That phase was over. Completely. I had always believed in taking the high road. But the high road doesn't mean standing still while others drag your name through the mud and loot your legacy. I started documenting everything. Emails, voicemails, the forged bank activity, photos of the cleaning sessions they conducted in the house without my permission. I scanned old texts from Marissa, especially the ones where she hinted I was too fragile to handle the pressure of inheritance. I found an old voicemail from Alex, back when Grandma was in hospice, laughing about how she probably wouldn't even remember where her will was. I created a folder called Evidence on my desktop. Every night, I added to it. Then I started meeting with Mr. Gordon more frequently. We drafted a cease and desist letter with real teeth. We reviewed the bank's internal logs and flagged the forged withdrawal attempts as potential fraud. I filed a report with the police, quietly. Helen wouldn't be arrested overnight, but the record would exist. A paper trail, one she wouldn't see until it was too late. I also reached out to Claire again at the florist shop and asked for a full record of communications from anyone claiming to be representing me. She sent over a folder full of suspicious emails, from Helen, from a burner account pretending to be me, even one from Marissa asking to make updates to the payroll structure. They'd been planning something bigger than I realized, not just grabbing the house or the money. They were trying to erase me entirely and reinstall themselves as the rightful heirs to everything Grandma had left. I still hadn't told them I knew. I still smiled in the family group chat, which suddenly added me again. When Helen posted a photo of some cousin's baby, I still answered texts from Marissa with polite, short replies. I let them believe they were getting away with it. Because if they thought I was clueless, they wouldn't see what was coming. And that was the only thing keeping me afloat through that pit of silence, isolation, and slow brewing betrayal. The knowledge that I wasn't powerless. The knowledge that Grandma had left me more than just stuff. She'd left me trust. And I was finally about to show them what happens when the quiet one stops staying quiet. Something shifted the moment I let go of the idea that I owed them kindness. I wasn't raised to be spiteful. Grandma had always said, "Don't fight fire with fire. Build something so bright they can't ignore it." I used to think that meant staying small and polite. But now, I understood what she really meant. Power doesn't come from pleasing people. It comes from owning who you are without apology. So that's what I did. The first step? The house. I made it my own. Not in a loud, flashy way, no marble countertops or massive renovations. Just quiet, deliberate upgrades. I took down the old wallpaper in the foyer and replaced it with a deep blue shade that made the space feel warmer. I fixed the loose floorboards myself. Replaced Grandma's flickering porch light with a soft amber lantern she would have loved. Every evening, I lit it as the sun set, like a quiet signal to myself that I belonged here now. This wasn't just a house I inherited. It was home. Then came the business. Claire and I met over coffee. She'd been running the day-to-day of Evelyn and Bloom since before Grandma got sick, and she was good. Really good. Smart, detail-oriented, no patience for drama. She'd been skeptical when Grandma first said I'd be taking over her share, but after what Helen pulled, Claire was firmly in my corner. "I want to update the brand," I told her during that first meeting. "Website, social, logo, everything. Same heart, new face." She grinned. "You're the designer, right? Let's do it." Over the next month, I poured myself into it. I rebranded Evelyn and Bloom with a soft modern palette, hand-drew a new logo based on one of Grandma's favorite flowers, and built an entirely new website with online ordering, same-day delivery options, and a weekly blog showcasing bouquet styles. Claire handled logistics. I handled visuals. Sales doubled in 6 weeks. We started getting orders from out of state. A local wedding planner featured us in a spread. A home decor Instagram account shared our bouquets in a post that went viral. I kept it quiet. No big announcements to the family. No smug updates. I just did the work. And as my confidence grew, so did my distance from them. I didn't go to the next family barbecue. I sent a polite text, "Hope it goes well. I'm buried in a design deadline." When my aunt posted a photo of a new car with a caption about spoiling yourself when you've earned it, I didn't bite. I already knew she was panicking. Her fraud case was moving slowly but steadily. The cease and desist we'd sent had shut her out of the business completely, and the bank was still investigating the forged withdrawal attempts. I'd kept it all quiet, legal, and airtight. The more silent I stayed, the more they unraveled. I heard through the grapevine, mostly Claire and a few mutuals, that Marissa was fuming about being cut off from Grandma's jewelry. She'd apparently tried to sell a few costume pieces she did get, only to be told at a pawn shop they were worthless. Alex, meanwhile, had tried to play nice again, sending texts like, "You always were the creative one, man. Knew you'd do well." I didn't respond. Let them feel the silence. I started walking differently, talking differently, not in some exaggerated way, just grounded. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. I wasn't waiting for anyone to see me. I saw myself. I started booking higher-end clients again for my own design work. With the florist business doing well, I didn't need the extra money, but it felt good to build something again, to feel sharp, capable. I launched a small online store selling botanical-themed art prints. They sold out in a week. I donated a portion of the profits to Grandma's old church, quietly, under her name. The next time I visited the cemetery, I brought a fresh arrangement of lilies, her favorite, and placed them gently by her stone. I sat on the bench nearby and told her everything. About the new brand, about the growth, about how Claire was doing, about the porch light and the garden and the way the morning sun hit the kitchen window now. "I'm okay," I said softly, brushing some dust off her name. "You didn't make a mistake." And I knew, deep down, she already knew that. By the end of that month, Mr. Gordon had compiled enough evidence to push forward on multiple fronts. He advised patience. The legal process moved slow, but steady. And I was fine with that. Because I wasn't in a rush. I had something they didn't. Peace. They had houses filled with tension. Social media filled with fake smiles. Credit cards filled with purchases they couldn't afford, trying to prove something to people who didn't care. I had a home. I had a business. I had me. And quietly, steadily, I was building the kind of life they could never take away because it wasn't handed to me by status or noise. It was earned in silence. But power like that? It doesn't stay invisible forever. Sooner or later, they were going to find out just how far I'd come. And when they did, well, they wouldn't be the ones holding the cards anymore. It happened on a Tuesday. Claire and I were finalizing the quarterly inventory for Evelyn and Bloom, sitting in the office above the shop. Sunlight poured through the old, flower-dusted window panes, the air tinged with lavender and eucalyptus. Business had been steady, better than steady, and the holiday season was coming up. We were planning a full line of gift boxes, limited edition arrangements, maybe even a pop-up stall at the winter market. "I found something you might want to see," Claire said, closing her laptop with a click. She reached for an envelope on the corner of her desk. "It's from a real estate agent. Came in the mail addressed to the shop, not you directly. Strange thing is, it's about your house." I raised a brow. What kind of real estate agent? The kind who doesn't check ownership records before making bold offers. I opened the envelope and scanned the letter inside. It was from a company called Greenfield Acquisitions. Sleek branding. Professional language. And right in the second paragraph, it said, "As discussed with Helen Morgan, we understand the property at 14 Rosewood Lane is part of a family estate currently being evaluated for sale." I stopped reading. Helen again. She was trying to sell my house behind my back. I clenched my jaw. She hadn't just tried to steal Grandma's money. She hadn't just tried to forge away my business shares. She was actively shopping the house around to developers, assuming I wouldn't catch it, or worse, that she could still convince someone that she had control over Grandma's estate. I looked up at Claire. "She's still pretending it's hers." Claire nodded. But she slipped. "These letters? Paper trails. This company will have logs, emails, meeting notes." And just like that, a door cracked open in my mind. Because I knew something Helen didn't. A few weeks earlier, Mr. Gordon had mentioned that the fraud and forgery cases we were building, the email scam, the bank withdrawals, the fake business documents, were solid, but slow. The legal system crawled. But if we found intent, if we could prove premeditated action with financial incentive, that changed everything. "This might be what we needed," I murmured, reading over the letter again. "Proof she's actively trying to profit off my inheritance." While under investigation, I scanned the signature, a name, Thomas Vicks, Senior Acquisition Agent. Then I noticed a date and time for a scheduled property evaluation walkthrough, written in small print at the bottom. Friday, 11 a.m. At my house. I stared at the letter. She'd actually scheduled a walkthrough. Without asking. Without checking. Without permission. She was sending a developer to my front door to walk through my home like it was a product on a shelf. That was the final piece. I wasn't just going to stop her. I was going to use her own greed to expose everything. By Friday morning, I had everything set. I called Mr. Gordon and filled him in. He agreed. This was the moment to act. He drafted a legal notice confirming my sole ownership of the property and advising any third party they were being misled if they entered under false pretenses. I printed it and placed a copy on the front door, just in case. But I didn't cancel the walkthrough. I wanted them to show up. Let them see who actually lived there. Let them realize they'd been dealing with a liar. At 10:55, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and set out a plate of store-bought pastries. Grandma always said if you're going to make a point, be polite. It unsettles people more. At 11:02, a black BMW pulled into the driveway. Out stepped a sharply dressed man in a tailored gray coat, leather folder under one arm. He looked around, a little confused, then knocked on the door. I opened it with a smile. "Mr. Vicks, I presume?" He blinked. Yes. Is Helen?" "No Helen today," I said, motioning for him to step inside. "You're speaking with the owner, Noah Morgan." He paused. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. "I apologize. I was told." "I know what you were told," I said calmly, offering him coffee. "But it was a lie. This house was legally passed to me. Helen has no authority over it. And if you check your records, you'll notice she's not even on the title." He didn't take the coffee, just stood there, clearly uncomfortable. "That's not great news for your company," I imagine. I added. Especially if you've already started negotiating. He fumbled to open his folder, probably to check the documents or salvage some part of the meeting. That's when I handed him my folder, the one Mr. Gordon prepared, complete with notarized proof of inheritance, the cease and desist order filed against Helen, and the pending fraud reports. I'd suggest speaking with your legal department, I said, tone still polite. You might want to reconsider doing business with someone currently under investigation for attempted estate fraud. He didn't stay long after that. I watched from the window as he made a hurried call the moment he reached his car. Probably to Helen. Good. Let her panic. That evening, I went back through the logs of everything she'd done since Grandma passed. The visits, the messages, the sneaky paperwork. It was all in the folder now, all time-stamped. But now I had external proof. Companies she'd lied to, people she'd misled, actions she couldn't walk back. And I wasn't stopping there, because I'd also learned something else. Something she definitely didn't know. Grandma had been sitting on undeveloped land, a little parcel behind the house, technically part of the same property, almost useless for decades. But now, the city was expanding. Developers were offering serious money for nearby lots. I found a note from Grandma tucked in one of her gardening journals. This land will be valuable someday. If you get it, don't sell it fast. Wait until they come to you. They were already starting to. 3 different offers had come through since I'd inherited the house. And I was going to wait. I wasn't just sitting on a nice home and a thriving business. I was sitting on leverage. And if Helen and the rest of them wanted to keep digging their hole deeper, I'd let them. Because now, I had everything I needed. The documents, the witnesses, the motive, and the timing. They thought they were playing chess. But I was playing checkmate in slow motion. And the next move was mine. The call came a week later. Mr. Morgan? It was Mr. Gordon, my attorney. We've got what we need. If you're ready to move forward, I'd say now's the time. I was ready. For months, I'd endured the manipulation, the faked emails, the stolen bank info, the attempted hijacking of Grandma's business, the effort to sell my home, my inheritance, right out from under me. And I had said nothing. I'd smiled, nodded, played the quiet one. But I wasn't quiet anymore. It began with a single letter, sent by certified mail to Helen's home address. Marissa got one too. So did Alex. Inside was a formal legal notice outlining their actions: fraud, identity misrepresentation, attempted theft, harassment, and unauthorized interference with an estate. All backed by documentation. All signed and notarized by Gordon's firm. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. One last chance to walk away before things got ugly. They didn't walk away. Instead, Helen called me. I let it ring twice, then picked up. Noah, she started, voice sharp and breathless. What exactly do you think you're doing? I didn't say anything at first. Just let the silence do the talking. Are you seriously going through with this? She snapped. You're going to ruin our entire family over some misunderstanding. Is that what you call it now? I asked quietly. Trying to forge my name, steal from my accounts, lie to real estate developers, and replace my email identity. All a misunderstanding? I was trying to protect the estate. That house. Grandma's things, they weren't meant for you. You were barely around. I almost laughed. The irony. That's funny. She seemed to think otherwise. Her voice changed then, from anger to desperation. Look, if you go through with this, you're going to drag the family through court. You think you're ready for that? All that attention? You're not built for this. And maybe she was right. The old me wasn't. But the me she created with her cruelty? He was built exactly for this. I don't need to drag anything, I said calmly. All I have to do is let the truth come out. The rest will happen on its own. Then I hung up. The next day, Mr. Gordon filed the first formal complaint: fraud and attempted theft related to the forged business emails. He'd secured statements from Claire, dated screenshots, and metadata from the spoofed messages. The florist's financial team submitted a letter confirming the attempted payroll manipulation. Within 2 days, Helen's access to any business-related accounts was locked down permanently. Her email address was blacklisted. A notice was sent to every supplier, vendor, and partner she had previously reached out to under false pretenses. Professionally, of course, with a neutral tone. But it was clear. She was done. Next came the banking fraud. The forged withdrawal attempts weren't just unethical, they were illegal. And thanks to the flagged transactions and the bank's internal records, we had timestamps, voice logs, and identity mismatches all tied directly to her. The police had already filed an incident report weeks ago. Now, they had what they needed to move forward. A detective contacted me for a follow-up. "Do you want to press charges?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. Then I remembered all the nights I sat on the porch alone. The limo driving away without me. The silence in the group chats. The smirks. The fake brunch invites. The way they tried to erase me from Grandma's legacy like I was a stain they needed to scrub off. "Yes," I said. "I want to press charges." The house was next. The real estate company, Greenfield Acquisitions, was more than willing to cooperate once they realized they'd been misled. Mr. Vicks, the man who visited my home, submitted a formal affidavit describing the interaction and Helen's false claims. Turns out she'd already provided them with a fake signed letter of intent to sell. They were furious. Their lawyers contacted Gordon and offered full documentation in exchange for not pursuing legal recourse against them for negligence. We agreed. That gave us the smoking gun, intent to sell property she did not own, using forged documentation. And finally, the public fallout. I didn't mean to make it public. I never wanted that. But news like this doesn't stay quiet in small towns. When the fraud charges were filed and the shop started getting questions from customers, Claire made the call. "We should say something," she said. "Not the dirty details. Just enough to clarify who's running things now." So I wrote a statement. It was brief. Following an internal audit and review of recent events, Evelyn and Bloom is now fully under the direction of Noah Morgan, grandson of Evelyn herself. All previous management outside this role has been removed due to unauthorized actions. We appreciate your continued support and look forward to serving the community with the same heart Grandma Evelyn always brought to her work. It was shared on our website and quietly posted on social media. Marissa commented within 2 hours, "Wow, petty much." I didn't respond, but our customer count jumped by 15% that weekend. Alex, meanwhile, tried to be clever. He posted a photo of a new wine bottle with the caption, "Funny how some people think silence equals weakness." I blocked him. Let him scream into the void. The last thing I did, the cherry on top, was visit the county office and finalize the parcel registration on the land behind Grandma's house. Remember the one she said to wait on? It had recently been rezoned for mixed-use development. I met with a small architectural firm that offered to lease it, not buy it, and build a greenhouse cafe there. They offered a generous long-term contract with profit sharing. Grandma would have loved it. I signed the deal. Then I took the first check they issued and walked it straight to the bank. Not $1 came from their world. Everything I had, everything I was building, it came from me, and from the one person who truly believed in me from the start. They didn't see it coming, because they never saw me at all. And now, they couldn't look away. The fallout wasn't loud. There were no courtroom showdowns or teary-eyed apologies. It was quieter than that, more surgical. The way truth often is when it's armed with patience, documentation, and the right attorney. The fraud charges against Helen were officially filed 2 weeks after the final affidavit came in from Greenfield Acquisitions. Attempted financial fraud, forgery, and impersonation. Nothing flashy enough for the evening news, but enough to show up on a background check. Enough to lose her the part-time bookkeeping job she'd clung to. Enough to freeze her credit temporarily and disqualify her from applying for a business license again. She tried to downplay it, of course. Claimed it was a misunderstanding. A technical error. But when friends started asking why she hadn't shown up at her volunteer committee or why she wasn't involved in church fundraisers anymore, the cracks showed. People talk in small towns. And they remember. Marissa fared no better. She was working with a boutique marketing firm in the city, a job she bragged about at every family gathering. Turned out, they weren't thrilled to discover her name tied to an ongoing fraud investigation. Even if she wasn't officially charged, her connection to the forged business emails and attempted payroll tampering was enough to get her let go quietly. She posted vague Instagram stories about haters and betrayal, but her polished influencer smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. As for Alex, he tried to keep his hands clean throughout, pretending none of it involved him. But I wasn't interested in punishing him. Life had its own way of handling people like him. He over-leveraged his lifestyle. Fancy condo, leased car, always chasing something shinier. When word got around about the legal drama involving his family, a few of his high-net clients pulled their investments. Quiet exits, no drama. Just fewer phone calls, fewer meetings, fewer invitations. He messaged me once more. Guess you got what you wanted. Hope it was worth blowing everything up. I left it on read. Because the truth was, I didn't blow anything up. I just stopped fixing what they kept breaking. Grandma's house was peaceful now. I kept the garden alive, planted a new section with the first check from the cafe land deal. Lavender and honeysuckle. The porch light still clicked on every evening. The smell of fresh flowers still drifted through the hallways. The florist shop flourished. Claire got a well-deserved raise. We hired 2 more part-time employees to help with the holiday rush. We hosted our first community workshop, wreath making and cider, and people lined up outside. Someone brought a photo of Grandma, printed out from an old newspaper article. They placed it on the counter with a small candle. She'd be proud, Claire said, watching the flame flicker. I nodded, feeling the weight of that truth settle in my chest. Grandma didn't just leave me things. She left me faith in myself, and no one could steal that. Weeks later, I got a formal letter from the bank. The fraud case was closed, and Helen's name was officially flagged across multiple institutions. They enclosed a copy of the report for my records, a neat file of printed lies turned into truth. I placed it in a drawer, locked it, and then I did something simple. I went to the closet, pulled out the suit I wore to Grandma's funeral, the one I'd worn alone after being left behind by a limo filled with people who now couldn't look me in the eye, and I took it to the tailor. Got it properly fitted, cleaned, pressed, because that chapter was over. And the next time they saw me, it would be on my terms, at my pace, in my name. They thought cutting me out of a limo would be the end of me, but it was the beginning. And when the will was read, and they all turned to me in stunned silence, waiting for a reaction, I didn't say a word. I just smiled. My name's Jason, I'm 27, and I guess you could say I'm the black sheep of the family, not because I've done anything particularly rebellious or outrageous, but because I don't bend easily to pressure, especially not the kind that comes wrapped in family guilt trips. I've always been the quiet one, the one who listens more than he talks, which ironically makes people think I'm either weak or easily manipulated. They tend to forget that silence doesn't mean surrender. That's probably why they thought they could pull the stunt they did a few weeks ago. It all started with Grandpa's house. He passed away a year ago, and even though we all knew it was coming, he'd been sick for a while, it didn't soften the blow. Grandpa was the kind of man who filled every room with stories, who knew how to fix anything, and who made you feel like you were the most important person in the world when he talked to you. He wasn't just a grandfather, he was a friend, a mentor, the one person in the family who never made me feel like I was less than, just because I wasn't as loud or as successful as my siblings. So when he passed, it left a hole in me I didn't really know how to fill. A few months after the funeral, I got a call from his lawyer. To my complete shock, Grandpa had left his house to me. Just me. Not to my parents, not to my sister Katie, who's 32 and thinks she's the second coming of Marie Kondo with all her decluttering businesses, not to my brother Josh, who's 30 and somehow still lives off sporadic crypto wins and dad's retirement account. Just me. The house, the land, everything. And it wasn't just a sentimental thing. This house was worth serious money. I'm talking nearly 7 figures, sitting in a fast-developing part of town. Developers had been sniffing around for years. I didn't really know what to say when the lawyer told me. Grandpa had mentioned once or twice that he wanted the house to stay in the family, that he didn't trust anyone else to take care of it, but I never imagined he'd write it into the will. Still, I didn't tell anyone. Not right away. Something in me told me to keep it close, like carrying a lit match through a dry forest. My family, we don't handle surprises well, especially not when money's involved. So I waited. I read the will from front to back, highlighted things, reread certain paragraphs a dozen times. Grandpa had made it airtight. I leave my home, the entirety of the estate, and all that resides within it to my grandson Jason. It is my wish that he maintain its integrity and ensure it is not sold or divided for personal gain. There it was, in his handwriting, witnessed and notarized. No loopholes. No ambiguity. About a week after I'd quietly started moving some of my things into the house, I got the call. Hey Jace, Katie's voice had that falsely sweet tone she uses when she wants something. Mom said you've been staying at Grandpa's house? Is that, like, a thing now? I told her yes, that Grandpa had left it to me. Silence. Then a light laugh. Wait, seriously? I thought Mom and Dad were figuring that out. Like, what to do with it? No, it's mine. It was in the will. More silence. Then a curt, huh, and she hung up. The next day, I got a text from my mom asking if we could have a family talk. That's what she always called it when we were kids and someone messed up. Family talk. It never meant an actual discussion. It meant a group lecture disguised as a democratic forum. I agreed to come over. I figured it would be better to face it head on. But I wasn't ready for the full ambush. They were all there, Mom, Dad, Katie, Josh, sitting around the living room like they were staging an intervention. My sister stood up the moment I walked in. "Hey, Jace," she said, smiling that tight, practice smile she uses when she's about to pitch a client. "Thanks for coming. We've been talking, and we just wanted to clear the air." I sat down, my chest already tightening. "About what?" "The house," Josh said. "It's just a big asset, you know? And we were thinking, it's only fair that we all benefit from it." "Benefit?" I asked. Mom jumped in. "Your grandfather would have wanted the whole family to be taken care of, Jason. You know how generous he was. He wouldn't have wanted that house to just sit there while the rest of us struggle." "I'm not letting it just sit there," I said slowly. "I live there. I'm maintaining it." Katie crossed her arms. "Yeah, but we were thinking, maybe we sell it? Split the money? It could help Josh pay off some debts, help me expand my business, help Mom and Dad finally go on that trip they've been dreaming of. Everyone wins." Josh nodded like a bobblehead. "It's not like you need the whole house. You don't even use half the rooms." I stared at them, trying to wrap my head around it. "You know what the will says." Dad sighed. "We just think you're being a bit selfish here, son." And that's when I pulled it out. I had brought a copy of the will, just in case. Something told me I'd need it. I unfolded it carefully and laid it on the coffee table. "Then I guess you haven't read this part." I pointed to the section. Grandpa's wishes, in plain ink. Not just that the house was mine, but that it was never to be sold or divided for profit. That he trusted me to preserve it. For a few seconds, there was total silence. Then everything exploded. Katie snatched the paper and started reading it like she was scanning for a misprint. Josh said something about how I must have manipulated Grandpa in his last days. Mom started crying, actual tears, and Dad said something about how this family is falling apart. The living room turned into a courtroom, everyone talking over each other, accusing, guilt-tripping, yelling. And I just sat there. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I wanted them to say everything first. Let it all spill out. The entitlement, the resentment, the pure disbelief that Grandpa would choose me over them. That he'd trust me, the quiet one, with something so important. That's where things really started to change. That night wasn't just a family argument. It was the beginning of something way darker. I started noticing things. People watching the house. Missing mail. Whispers from family friends. And then came the accident that made me realize they weren't going to stop at words. After that night, I didn't go back to my parents' house for a while. I needed space, not just physically, but mentally. I left the copy of the will behind on purpose. Let them stew on it. Let them read it a dozen times and twist it in their heads. Maybe they'd realize they couldn't pressure me. Or maybe they'd double down. Spoiler, they doubled down. At first, things were quiet. Too quiet. I kept waiting for a phone call, a text, some passive-aggressive Facebook post from Katie about selfish people who inherit what they didn't earn. But nothing came. For about 2 weeks, it was like I'd been ghosted by my entire family. And weirdly, that made it worse. It's one thing to deal with yelling and guilt trips. It's another to sit in the eye of a storm and know it hasn't passed. It's just getting ready to hit harder. Then the little things started. First, I noticed my mail was going missing. Not everything, just the important stuff. Bank statements, a package I was expecting from a friend in Oregon, even a utility bill. I thought it was a mistake at first. I double-checked with the post office. My address was correct. No holds. Nothing flagged. Then came the visitor. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was working from home, freelance graphic design. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills, and I heard a knock. Not the casual kind. The kind that says I know you're in there, and I'm not leaving. I opened the door to find Mr. Donnelly, one of Grandpa's old neighbors from 3 houses down. He looked uncomfortable, almost sheepish. "Hey, Jason," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Listen, I probably shouldn't be getting involved, but your mom came by last night." I blinked. "She did?" He nodded. "Yeah, said she was checking on the property. Wanted to make sure the transition was going smoothly." "Transition?" She made it sound like the house was still in probate. Like it wasn't really yours yet. I just stared at him, feeling my stomach drop. I knew my mom could be manipulative, but I didn't think she'd straight up lie to a neighbor. Especially one who'd known Grandpa for over 30 years. She asked if I'd seen anyone suspicious around the place, Donnelly added. like maybe someone had broken in. I didn't think much of it at first, but I figured I should tell you. I thanked him and shut the door, heart pounding. That night, I installed cameras. Front yard, backyard, side alley, even one above the garage, just in case. Sure enough, 3 nights later, I got my first hit. Around midnight, motion was detected on the camera near the side gate. I checked the feed and there he was, Josh. Hoodie on, phone flashlight in hand, fiddling with the gate like he was trying to pick the lock or find a loose latch. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I wanted to be sure. I saved the footage and watched as he gave up after a minute, cursed under his breath. Yes, I could hear it, and walked back toward his car, which was parked a block down the street. The next morning, I sent the clip in a group text. Just a link, no caption. No one replied. Not even Katie, who normally can't help herself when things get messy. That same afternoon, I got a knock on the door. This time, it was my dad. He didn't even say hello. Just stood there on the porch, arms crossed. Jason, this is getting out of hand. I raised an eyebrow. This? You mean your son trying to break into my house? He didn't flinch. He was just trying to talk to you. You've shut everyone out. I laughed. I couldn't help it. He was trying to talk to me by sneaking in through the gate at midnight? Dad sighed. You've got to understand. This house means a lot to all of us. Your grandfather, he wasn't in his right mind near the end. He'd been sick, confused. There it was. The narrative shift. They tried guilt. They tried sweet talking. Now they were trying to rewrite history. Don't do that, I said quietly. Don't disrespect him just because you didn't get what you wanted. Dad's face darkened. You're making a mistake, Jason. You're dividing this family. No, I said. You did that the second you tried to guilt me out of something Grandpa clearly wanted me to have. And I shut the door. But I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I kept the lights off and watched the cameras, paranoid that someone else would try to pay me a visit. My mind kept racing with what-ifs. What if they tried to break in again? What if they forged documents? What if they found some obscure legal trick to challenge the will? Then, just when I thought things might calm down again, I got the letter. It came in a plain white envelope, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, formal. Dear Jason, we, as a family, have decided to dispute the validity of the last will and testament of your grandfather. We believe he was not of sound mind and that the will does not reflect his true intentions. Consider this letter a formal notice of our intent to pursue legal action unless a fair resolution can be reached outside of court. My hands started shaking. They were actually going to do it. They were going to drag me into court. They were going to tear Grandpa's name apart, claim he was senile, accuse me of manipulation, just to get their hands on something they felt entitled to. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was war. And I wasn't going to play defense forever. After I read the letter, I sat in that living room, Grandpa's living room, for what felt like an hour, just staring at the wall where he used to hang that framed black and white photo of him and Grandma. I could almost hear his voice in my head, chuckling the way he used to when someone in the family got too big for their britches. He always said, "There's a reason I don't trust everyone with a spare key, Jace. People show their true colors when money's involved." And he was right. I wasn't angry. Not in the way you might think. I wasn't yelling or breaking things or pacing around the house. What I felt was deeper, slower, colder. It was betrayal wrapped in paperwork. This wasn't just a petty argument anymore. My family had drawn up legal threats against me. They were ready to drag Grandpa's name through the mud if it meant they might win. And they thought I'd fold under pressure. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The next morning, I set up a meeting with Grandpa's lawyer, Mr. Henley. A no-nonsense man in his 70s with tired eyes but a razor-sharp mind. He'd been Grandpa's friend and attorney for decades. The office still smelled like old leather and coffee, the kind of place where you could imagine big decisions being made behind closed doors. I slid the letter across his desk. He read it in silence, mouth set in a firm line. "Well," he said finally, setting his glasses down. "They're bluffing. At least partially. This kind of letter is designed to scare you into a settlement. But legally? They don't have much ground. They're saying he wasn't of sound mind." Henley leaned back. "And I have over 20 hours of video testimony proving otherwise. Recorded over the final 6 months. Your grandfather was meticulous, Jason. He anticipated this. That caught me off guard." "Video testimony?" Henley gave a small smile. He called it his insurance. Said he knew how your family could get when they smelled money. He even made sure to address each of them individually. I stared. "Wait, what?" He nodded. If they decide to challenge the will, I'll be submitting it to the court. It's powerful stuff. He talks about why he's leaving you the house, what it means to him, and how he didn't trust the others not to sell it off. There's no way they come out of that looking good. I felt something loosen in my chest. For the first time since all this started, I didn't feel like I was standing alone. Grandpa had known. He had seen it coming, and he planned for it. Still, I knew this wasn't over. People like Katie and Josh, they don't back down just because the law isn't on their side. They get louder, pettier, meaner. And right on cue, they did. About a week after the letter, the smear campaign started. It was subtle at first. A couple of coincidental run-ins at the grocery store where people gave me odd looks. Then I saw it. Katie had posted a long, vague status on Facebook. Something about how some people will manipulate the elderly for personal gain, and how it's heartbreaking to watch a family fall apart because of greed. I didn't respond. Not publicly. But I took screenshots. Every word. Every comment. And when Josh posted a photo of Grandpa's house with the caption, "Shame this old place is being wasted," I saved that too. Then came the drop-ins. A cousin I hadn't seen in years suddenly wanted to catch up. A neighbor I barely knew knocked on my door to check on me. One of Katie's old high school friends messaged me saying, "Just wanted you to know your sister's really hurting." I kept smiling, nodding, pretending like I didn't see the pattern. But inside, I was keeping score. Then, one night, things crossed a line. It was past 11 p.m. I was getting ready for bed when I heard a bang against the side of the house. Not loud enough to be a break-in, but enough to make me freeze. I checked the cameras. Someone had egged the house. For eggs. One after the other. All hitting the west wall, right below Grandpa's old bedroom window. The figure ran off after the last throw, hoodie pulled up, face obscured. But the gait, the way he ran, it was Josh. I'd bet my life on it. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in Grandpa's recliner, staring at the dark ceiling, running scenarios through my head. Legal action. Restraining orders. Public exposure. I had the receipts. The video. The lawyer. Everything. But I realized something. I didn't want to just win. I wanted them to understand. To feel what they were doing. Not just to me, but to Grandpa. To everything he built. And I had just the way to do it. So I waited. I didn't reply to the texts. I didn't confront Josh. I didn't clean the eggs off the house until the morning, when the sun had baked them into the siding, making it clear for all the neighbors to see. Then I sent out my own invitation. A family talk. This time, at Grandpa's house. The same living room. The same worn carpet. The same fireplace where we used to hang our stockings. When they arrived, Katie, Josh, my parents, I greeted them with calm professionalism. No yelling. No accusations. I even had snacks. Lemon bars. Grandpa's favorite. Katie seemed amused. Josh looked smug. My mom just looked tired. "Why'd you call us here?" Dad asked. I nodded toward the coffee table. On it sat a laptop and a small speaker. "I thought we could clear the air," I said. But this time, with someone else in the room. I hit play. Grandpa's voice filled the room. Calm. Steady. Clear. "If you're watching this," he said, "it means I've passed, and I expect some people in this room aren't too happy with my decisions." I didn't look at their faces. I didn't need to. I left my house to Jason because I trust him. Not just to keep it intact, but to keep the family from tearing itself apart over it. If you're upset, that's fine. But don't pretend this is about fairness. This is about greed. And if you try to take this from him, you'll answer to me, even from the grave. The room was silent. Then Grandpa addressed them one by one. Katie, Josh, even my parents. He spoke calmly, even kindly, but he didn't pull punches. He talked about their patterns, their choices, the reasons why he'd made the decision he did. And then the screen went black. I stood. No more letters. No more threats. "You want to take this to court? Be my guest." But I have all of this documented. The harassment, the break-ins, the smear campaigns. And if you so much as step on this property again without my permission, I will press charges. I looked around the room. Now, if you actually want to talk like family, really talk, I'm open to that. But the next move is yours. No one said anything. Katie stood slowly. Her jaw was tight, but her eyes, there was something else there. Maybe guilt. Maybe regret. I couldn't tell. She left without a word. Josh followed. Less graceful. Muttering something under his breath. My parents lingered. My mom looked at the photo on the wall. She sighed. "He always did love that chair," she said softly. I nodded. "Yeah, he did." And then they were gone. But that wasn't the end. Because a few days later, I got a phone call from someone I hadn't heard from in years. Someone with a very different stake in this whole story. And what they told me changed everything. So let me take you back to that phone call. It was Aunt Diane, Grandpa's younger sister. We hadn't spoken in a few years. She lives 2 states over and doesn't do the whole family drama thing, but she and Grandpa used to talk weekly. "Jason," she said, her voice calm but clipped, "I heard what's happening. Katie called me, told me her side of it. Said you were trying to steal the house." I didn't even respond. I just waited. I knew she was lying, Diane continued. "Because your grandfather called me the day he finalized the will. Said he was doing something that would cause a ruckus and that I should stay far away from the fallout. But he also asked me to keep a few things safe, things he didn't want anyone else getting their hands on." My pulse picked up. "What things?" "He gave me a small metal lockbox the last time I visited. Told me to mail it to you after his funeral if things started getting ugly." Guess what I just dug out of my closet? Within a week, the box was in my hands. Inside were 5 things. A notarized letter from Grandpa, reaffirming the legitimacy of the will, an old cassette tape, labeled, "Let them hear this if they try anything," copies of photos and text between Josh and some shady investor friends. Looking to buy Grandpa's land. Before he passed, a list of maintenance tasks Grandpa had me do around the house over the past 2 years. Every time I visited, he'd had me fix something, paint something, measure something. That list was dated and signed. And finally, a sealed envelope labeled, "To be delivered to Jason's attorney if the family sues." This man, I swear, he played 5 moves ahead even when he was 90. I called Mr. Henley immediately. We went over everything in that box, and with a grin, he said, "They picked the wrong chessboard." So here's what I did. I didn't wait for them to file the lawsuit. I went on offense. I had Henley draft a cease and desist for the harassment, and we made it very clear, if they moved forward with any legal action, we would not only countersue for emotional distress and defamation, but we'd also submit the entire package, including the cassette tape and investor messages, to the court. What was on the tape, you ask? A conversation Grandpa recorded between him and Josh during one of their visits. Josh had casually suggested getting rid of the house after Grandpa passed, saying, "You know, we could all use a chunk of that money. I bet Jason won't mind splitting it." Grandpa chuckled and said, "I'm still alive, boy. And don't count on Jason giving up that house. He's got more backbone than you think." They thought they were playing checkers. Grandpa set them up for chess. When they got the letter, everything stopped. No lawsuit. No more visits. Not even a whimper on social media. They went quiet like someone flipped a switch. Katie deactivated her Facebook. Josh moved out of state a month later, probably to dodge the embarrassment. My parents? They never apologized directly, but my mom sent a card a few months later with just 2 words. "I'm sorry." I didn't write back. Because here's the thing, boundaries are important. And love doesn't mean tolerating abuse dressed up as family loyalty. I kept the house. Every inch of it. Renovated it, slowly. Turned Grandpa's study into my work-from-home office. Planted his favorite tomatoes in the backyard, even though I have no clue what I'm doing and they look sad most of the time. But it's home. My home. And not because of the deed, not because of the will, but because someone I loved and respected believed in me enough to protect me even after he was gone. Grandpa didn't just leave me a house. He left me peace. And I won't let anyone take that away. Hey, I don't even know if I'm looking for advice or just need to vent, but I guess we'll see where this goes. I'm Alex. I'm 27, and for the past few years, I've been working as a full-time streamer. It's not something I really talk about with my family much, mostly because they don't understand it, and honestly, I prefer it that way. But here's the thing. I make good money. More than enough to live comfortably, invest, and, up until recently, support my family financially. My parents were never rich, and growing up, things were always a little tight. My dad, let's call him Greg, worked an average office job and always complained about how real jobs don't pay enough. My mom stayed home, and my sister, Emily, well, she's a few years younger than me and still figuring life out. I don't blame her for that. But what I do blame her for is what happened a few nights ago. See, ever since I started making real money, my dad's attitude toward me has been weird. He's never directly acknowledged my success, never asked how I make a living, and certainly never treated me like an adult who's capable of taking care of himself and them. Instead, he treats me like some loser who refuses to get a real job. It used to just be eye-roll-worthy comments like, "Oh, playing video games all day?" Must be so exhausting. Or, when are you going to do something productive with your life? But recently, it's gotten worse. Last weekend, I went over to my parents' house for a family game night. We don't do them often, but every once in a while, my mom insists on quality time, so I go along with it. I figured it'd be a few rounds of Uno, some lighthearted bickering, and maybe a home-cooked meal if I was lucky. Instead, it turned into a night of subtle and not so subtle jabs at me. It started small, my dad making fun of how I sleep in all day. I don't. I just work late. Then my sister chimed in about how I never really grew up. Eventually, my mom started reminiscing about how I used to have such big dreams when I was younger. You know, as if I were some tragic disappointment. I tried to brush it off, keep the peace. I've been dealing with this for years, and honestly, I've been over it. But what I didn't know was that Emily had been recording parts of the night on her phone. And 2 days later, she posted the video. I wasn't even looking for it. I was just scrolling through Instagram when I saw a notification that she had posted a story. I tapped on it without thinking. And there it was. A shaky, low-quality video of my dad, sitting back in his chair, drink in hand, saying, "I swear, Alex has the easiest life on earth. Plays his little games, talks to nerds all day, and somehow pays rent. He could be homeless in a year and not even see it coming." Then, laughter. My sisters. My mom's. Even my uncle was in the background, chuckling. I swiped through the next few clips, and it was more of the same. My dad going on about how Alex thinks he's some kind of businessman, while my mom made a joke about how I should put that computer science degree to use and get a real job. And my sister? She was filming it like it was some hilarious behind-the-scenes moment. At one point, she turned the camera on herself and whispered between giggles, "This is why he never brings a girlfriend home." Like I said, I knew they didn't take my job seriously. I knew they thought I was just wasting my life away in front of a screen. But something about seeing them say it when they thought I wasn't listening, hearing the laughter, the mockery, the sheer lack of respect, hit me in a way I didn't expect. For years, I'd been helping them. I'd covered bills when they were struggling. I paid off my mom's medical expenses when she needed surgery last year. I even gave Emily money when she was short on rent for her apartment. And yet, here they were, laughing at me like I was some pathetic loser they had to tolerate. I closed Instagram, sat there for a second, just staring at my phone. And then, for the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me. Because if that's how they really saw me, maybe it was time to stop helping them. At first, my brain tried to make excuses for them. Maybe they were just joking. Maybe this was one of those moments where people say stupid things for the sake of family banter. Maybe I was overreacting. But the longer I thought about it, the more I realized, no. This wasn't just one offhand joke. This wasn't some harmless teasing between family members. This was contempt. A group of people I'd been supporting, in ways they probably didn't even realize, sitting around and laughing about how pathetic they thought I was. And the worst part? They meant it. You can tell when someone is joking. There's a certain energy to it, something lighthearted, something affectionate. But that video? That wasn't lighthearted. That was my dad sitting there, confidently tearing me down like it was the most natural thing in the world. That was my sister recording it because she thought it was entertaining. That was my mom chiming in, not to defend me, not to say, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't be trashing Alex like this," but to add to it. I felt something tighten in my chest. A dull, simmering heat that wasn't quite rage yet, but close. I wanted to text Emily right then and there. Ask her what the hell she was thinking. Demand an explanation. But I stopped myself. Instead, I opened my banking app. I scrolled through my recent transactions, just letting the numbers sink in. $1,500. Rent money for my parents' house. $600. The last chunk of Emily's car payment. $3,200. A credit card bill my dad had forgotten to pay. $250. Groceries, from when my mom called saying they were short last month. Line after line. A quiet, damning list of all the ways I'd been helping them. All the times they'd come to me with a small favor or an unexpected expense that they just couldn't handle on their own. And for years, I'd said yes. Every single time. Because I wanted to help. Because they were my family. Because no matter how dismissive my dad was, no matter how little respect they showed me, I convinced myself that I was doing the right thing. That someday, they'd see I wasn't some lazy failure. But now, staring at that video, at those transactions, it hit me. They weren't ever going to see me differently. Not unless I made them. I took a breath. Then another. And then, finally, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I opened my group chat with my parents and my sister, and I typed, "Hey, just saw Emily's video. Didn't realize you all thought so little of me." 3 little dots appeared almost instantly. My mom, typing. Then they vanished. Then my sister started. Then stopped. Finally, my dad replied, "Oh, you saw that? Come on. Don't be so sensitive. We were just joking around." I stared at the screen. Joking. Right. Before I could respond, Emily chimed in. "Yeah, it wasn't serious, lol. You know how dad gets after a few drinks." That heat in my chest burned a little hotter. Funny. I don't remember it being a joke when you needed money for rent last month. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, "Dude, seriously? You're mad over a stupid video?" I clenched my jaw. This wasn't just about the video. It was about the years of disrespect. The years of being treated like some kind of joke, even while I was the one making sure they could pay rent, keep the lights on, buy groceries. And they still didn't get it. So I typed one last message. "I'll make this simple. If you think my job is so embarrassing, you won't have to worry about it anymore. Don't ask me for another cent." Then, before they could respond, I muted the chat. And for the first time in years, I felt something like relief. Of course, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because if I knew anything about my dad, it was that he never handled losing control well. And I'd just taken away his favorite safety net. I had a feeling the real fallout was about to begin. The first few hours after I muted the chat were eerily quiet. No messages, no frantic apologies, no desperate attempts to argue. For a brief, stupid moment, I almost thought, maybe they got the message. Maybe they finally understand. Then, around 9 p.m., my phone lit up. Dad calling. I let it ring. A minute later, a text. "Pick up the damn phone." Then another. "Don't act like a child over a joke." And another. "You really think you're going to cut us off over this? Grow up, Alex." There it was. That familiar tone. That mix of anger and entitlement, like he was owed a conversation, like I was the one being unreasonable for finally setting a boundary. I ignored him. 2 minutes later, Emily texted, "Dude, you're being so dramatic. Dad's pissed. Just talk to him." It wasn't even that serious. I didn't respond. Then my mom, "Alex, honey, please don't do this. You know your father didn't mean any harm." That one stung more than it should have. Not because I believed her, but because of how automatic it was. How predictable. She always did this. Minimized his behavior. Swept things under the rug. Smoothed things over just enough to keep the peace. I could practically hear her voice in my head, that tired, exasperated sigh she always used whenever I dared to push back. "You know how he is, Alex. Just let it go." But I was done letting it go. I was done playing along. So I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, shut my laptop, and went live. It was a good stream, too. Pulled solid numbers, had a great game, even got a couple of big donations from some regulars. And the whole time, I kept thinking this is my real life. Not them. This. I should have felt free. And in a way, I did. But I also knew my dad. And I knew he wouldn't just let this go. I crashed around 3 a.m., completely exhausted, and when I woke up the next morning, the first thing I saw was my phone screen absolutely flooded with notifications. 16 missed calls. 8 from Dad. 4 from Mom. 2 from Emily. 2 from an unknown number. And then, at the very top, the one notification that made my stomach drop. My bank app. I tapped it open, already dreading what I'd see. $600 withdrawal. $150 withdrawal. $350 withdrawal. I stared at the screen, my brain taking a second to process what I was looking at before the realization hit me like a freight train. They took money from me. More specifically, my parents had just drained my joint emergency savings account. The account I had set up years ago. The one I created back when they were struggling, when I still thought I could trust them, when I was naive enough to believe that helping them would make them appreciate me. I barely used it now, it was just a backup, a safety net. And they were emptying it. My hands were shaking as I yanked my phone off the charger and immediately called my bank. "Yeah, I need to remove someone from my account," I said, barely able to keep my voice steady as the customer service rep greeted me. They started asking for security details, confirming my identity, all that standard stuff, but I could barely focus. My mind was racing, a mix of anger and disbelief crashing over me in waves. They really thought they could do this. They really thought they could steal from me, and I'd just take it. While the rep worked, I pulled up my family group chat and, without bothering to read any of the dozens of unread messages, I sent one final text. "You just stole from me." I'm done. Then I blocked all of them. No more arguments. No more justifications. No more excuses. I was done. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. People like my dad? They don't just walk away when you take away their control. And sure enough, later that afternoon, I heard it. A loud, angry knock at my door. Not the casual kind. Not someone dropping by for a visit. This was insistent. Demanding. I already knew who it was before I even checked. But still, I looked through the peephole anyway, just to confirm. And there he was. My father, standing on my doorstep, jaw clenched, face red, fist practically trembling at his sides. He didn't look angry, he looked furious. And I had a feeling this was about to get a lot worse. I stood there, staring through the peephole, my heart pounding. I wasn't scared, at least, not in the way he wanted me to be. But there was something about the way he stood there, his whole body practically vibrating with anger, that made my blood run cold. He didn't just look pissed. He looked offended. Like I had done something to him. Like I was the one who had crossed the line. Another knock. Louder this time. Alex. Open the damn door. His voice was sharp, clipped. A voice I'd heard my entire life. A voice that always expected to be obeyed. He pounded his fist against the door again. I know you're in there. I took a deep breath, trying to decide what to do. My first instinct was to ignore him, let him rage out there until he got bored and left. But I knew my dad. That wasn't going to happen. He would stay. He would yell. He would escalate. And I wasn't about to have my neighbors calling the cops because my father didn't know how to take no for an answer. So I unlocked the door. The second I cracked it open, he shoved his way inside. I barely had time to step back before he was already in my apartment, standing in my living room like he owned the place. What is wrong with you? He demanded, his voice low but seething. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, his whole body tense like he was barely holding himself back. You blocked your mother? Your sister? After everything we've done for you? I let out a sharp laugh. Everything they've done for me? That was rich. You stole from me, I said, my voice cold. Don't act surprised that I'm cutting you off. His face twisted into something ugly, a sneer curling at his lips. Stole from you? Don't be dramatic. That money was for the family. I felt my fingers tighten into a fist at my side. That was my money. That I earned. That I chose to share with you when I thought you actually needed it. I took a step closer, refusing to let him tower over me like he used to when I was a kid. But I'm done. I'm not your damn ATM. I'm not paying your bills. I'm not bailing you out anymore. He scoffed, shaking his head. So that's it? You're just going to turn your back on us? I felt something in me snap. You turned your back on me. I shot back, my voice rising. You and Emily and Mom sat there and laughed at me. You mocked me, humiliated me, and now that you're losing my money, now you suddenly care. He rolled his eyes, letting out an exasperated sigh like I was the one being ridiculous. Jesus, Alex, it was a joke. You're really gonna throw a tantrum over that? I couldn't help but laugh, sharp, bitter, incredulous. A joke. It was always a joke when it suited them. Yeah? Funny how it wasn't a joke when you were taking my money, though. Funny how you never had a problem with my embarrassing career when it was paying your damn rent. That was when something changed. His expression flickered, just for a second, just long enough for me to see it. Uncertainty. A crack in his armor. Like for the first time, it was actually registering how serious I was. But then, just as quickly, the anger was back. He stepped closer, jabbing a finger in my chest. You wouldn't have that money if it wasn't for us, he spat. We raised you. We supported you. You wouldn't be where you are if we hadn't busted our asses putting food on the table for you. I let out a breath, shaking my head. And I paid you back. 100 times over. I took care of you. I covered your bills. I gave you everything I could. And it was never enough for you. I locked eyes with him, my voice turning ice cold. But I'm done. You don't get to insult me, steal from me, and then waltz in here acting like I owe you something. For the first time since he barged in, he didn't have a response. He just stood there, breathing hard, his face twisted in rage. But I could see something else beneath it. Realization. Because deep down, I think he finally knew I wasn't bluffing. Then, just when I thought he might actually leave, his lips curled into a smirk. You think you're so damn successful, huh? His tone was mocking now, dripping with condescension. Think you're some big-shot internet star? I didn't say anything. I just crossed my arms and waited for him to get to his point. He let out a short, bitter laugh. You think this streaming thing is gonna last forever? You think you're set for life? Let me tell you something, kid, you're nothing. You're a joke. You think these people watching you online actually care about you? The second you stop being entertaining, the second some younger, better streamer comes along, you'll be forgotten. And when that happens, he spread his arms wide, giving me that patronizing, self-satisfied grin that used to make my stomach churn as a kid. You'll come crawling back, just like I knew you would. I just stared at him for a long moment. He really believed that. He needed to believe that. Because the alternative, that I was actually successful, that I was actually better off without them, was something his ego couldn't handle. So I smiled. A slow, knowing smile that made his smirk falter just slightly. You really think that, huh? I said, my voice almost amused. You really think I need you? I took a step closer, looking him dead in the eye. You have no idea how much money I make. And that was when I saw it. That flicker of something in his expression. Greed, curiosity, doubt. For the first time, he actually thought about it. And that was when I knew. He wasn't here to argue. He wasn't here to make me feel guilty. He was here because he thought he could still win. But he was about to learn he had already lost. For the first time in my life, I saw something I never thought I'd see on my father's face: hesitation, doubt. He wanted to believe I was bluffing. He needed to believe that I was still the same kid he could manipulate, that my success was temporary, that at any moment I'd come crawling back, desperate for his approval. But he wasn't stupid. He had never actually bothered to ask me about my career before, but now, standing in my apartment, my nice apartment, in a building he probably couldn't afford to rent a closet in, it was hitting him. I was doing better than him, better than all of them. And he hated it. You think you're too good for us now? His voice had lost some of its bite, but he was still trying to cling to the upper hand. You think just because you got lucky playing video games on the internet, you don't need your family anymore? I sighed, shaking my head. You don't get it, do you? This isn't about money. It's about respect. I gestured around the room. I worked my ass off for this. And instead of being happy for me, instead of being proud of me, you sat there and laughed. You treated me like a joke. I took a step closer, my voice cold. But I'm the one laughing now. His jaw clenched. You think you'll be laughing when this all falls apart? Because it will fall apart. And when it does, don't come crying to us. I tilted my head, studying him. That's funny, because I was about to say the same thing to you. He scoffed, but I saw the flash of uncertainty in his eyes. I let the silence stretch between us before I finally spoke again. You need me, I said simply, not the other way around. His face turned red. He opened his mouth to fire back some half-baked insult, but then his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his scowl deepened. I smirked. That mom asking if you got me to change my mind? His grip on the phone tightened. Bingo. I crossed my arms. Let me guess, since I cut you off, the bills are stacking up. You've got debts. Maybe mom's been hounding you because suddenly, there's no money coming in to save her from herself. Maybe Emily's panicking because she lost her safety net. I let my words sink in before I delivered the final blow. How does it feel, Dad, knowing that the embarrassing failure is the only reason you weren't drowning? His breathing was heavier now, his whole body tense with rage. But he had nothing to say, because he knew I was right. I walked to the door and opened it wide. Get out. He didn't move. He just stood there, staring at me like he couldn't quite believe this was happening. Like he still thought there was a way to turn this around. You're making a mistake, Alex, he finally said, voice low. Family is all you've got. I held his gaze. That's where you're wrong. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. I wasn't seeking his approval. I didn't care what he thought, and that scared him more than anything. He lingered for a few seconds longer, maybe hoping I'd change my mind, maybe waiting for some last-minute guilt trip to land. But I just stood there, waiting. And finally, he turned and walked out. I shut the door behind him and locked it. Then I took a deep breath. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't even sad. I just felt free. I took a moment to just stand there, letting the silence settle around me. No more guilt, no more obligations, no more bending over backward for people who never cared about me in the first place. It was over. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. I knew they'd try to reach out again. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually, when the money ran out, when things got tough, when they needed me again. But I wasn't going to be there. I had spent years supporting them, hoping they'd see my worth. But the truth was, I never needed their validation. I was successful without them. I was happy without them. And I wasn't about to let them drag me down ever again. So, what do you guys think? Did I handle this the right way? Would you have cut them off too? Or would you have given them one last chance? Let me know because honestly, I've never felt more sure about a decision in my life. My name's Evan. I'm 31, and until a few months ago, I thought my relationship with my older brother, Marcus, was just strained, not irreparably broken. We were never close growing up. He was always the golden child, charming, athletic, got straight A's without trying. I was quieter, more introverted, the computer kid who preferred tinkering with code over playing backyard football. Still, I figured we'd grow out of the sibling rivalry. Maybe even become real friends once we both hit adulthood. That never happened. If anything, it got worse. Marcus graduated with honors, landed a cushy finance job thanks to one of Dad's friends, and started dating Amelia, his college sweetheart who came from a family of surgeons and CEOs. I took a different path, dropped out of college to build my own tech startup with two high school friends. We bootstrapped for years, lived on ramen and late nights, and got laughed at more times than I could count. But last year, our company finally hit. We signed a major licensing deal with a healthcare tech firm, scaled fast, and suddenly, I wasn't that weird IT dropout anymore. I became a CEO. We're not a household name, but in our industry, people know who we are. Still, I never flaunted it, especially not to Marcus. I figured he didn't care, or worse, would just find a way to downplay it, like always. A few weeks ago, Marcus texted me about his housewarming. Or rather, he didn't invite me. He said it was going to be a classy event for Amelia's family and friends, people who were established professionals, and that it might be awkward having me there because, in his words, I know you're still figuring your stuff out. I stared at the message for a long time. No, hope you're doing well. No, maybe next time. Just a blunt little rejection from my own brother, like I was some embarrassing side character in his success story. What he didn't know, what no one in our family really knew, is that one of Amelia's uncles is the COO of the company we signed the deal with. I'd met him over Zoom during contract negotiations. Nice guy. Sharp. Very by the book. We didn't talk much outside of business, and I never connected the dots between him and Amelia until now. But once I saw her full name again in Marcus's text, it clicked. I could have said something. Could have used it as leverage or a jab. Instead, I just replied, got it. Hope the party goes well. And I meant it, kind of. I didn't want to go anymore. But then my parents started poking. My mom called and said, it's just a formality, Evan, don't take it personally. As if it was normal for your own brother to exclude you from his life. My dad chimed in too, saying Marcus was just trying to impress Amelia's family, and maybe I'd understand when I finally settled down. That one stung. I've always been the single one, sure, but not by choice. I've just been busy building something. Something real. Something they never took the time to ask about. I was going to let it go. Really, I was. But then, 2 nights before the party, I got a call from my cousin Derek. He said, hey man, are you really not coming to the housewarming? I told him the truth, that Marcus didn't want me there. Derek hesitated, then added, that's messed up. Especially with the stuff they've been saying. I asked what he meant, and he reluctantly shared that at a recent dinner, Marcus and Amelia joked that I was the black sheep who thought he could run a company from a garage, and her brother laughed. Some people just never grow up. My mom laughed too, apparently. My own mom. That was it. Something in me cracked. Not out of rage. More like disappointment. A hollow kind that sits deep. I wasn't going to crash the party, but I decided I'd show up for 5 minutes, give them a polite hello, and leave. Just to remind them I existed. So I put on a clean shirt, drove across town, and arrived right when the party was already full. Their new house was exactly what I expected, modern, spotless, magazine perfect. Music playing, glasses clinking, everyone dressed like they'd just stepped out of a real estate commercial. I walked in through the side gate, and Marcus's face fell the moment he saw me. He came over, fake smile plastered on, and said, Evan? Hey, I didn't think you were coming. I smiled back and said, just thought I'd stop by. Say hi. Before he could respond, Amelia showed up behind him. Her eyes scanned me like I was a waiter who'd wandered into the wrong backyard. Oh, hi, she said flatly. Nice of you to show up. The next 10 minutes were a masterclass in polite disdain. I got introduced to 2 of Amelia's aunts as Marcus's brother. He's in tech, or something, and then quickly shuffled aside so they could talk to a plastic surgeon from Boston. People kept asking me where I worked, and when I explained that I ran my own company, someone quipped, oh, like a startup, and chuckled like I'd said I sold candles on Etsy. Even Marcus's tone was different, like he was embarrassed for me. At one point, someone handed me a plate and pushed me toward the food table. I stood there, holding it, while a cluster of Amelia's cousins stood a few feet away, clearly whispering. One of them laughed and said just loud enough, "He looks like he walked here." Another added, "Isn't he the one who never finished college?" I didn't react. I just sipped my drink and reminded myself I wasn't here to prove anything. And then came the video call. Apparently, Amelia's dad couldn't attend in person, so they were FaceTiming him in to do a virtual toast. Marcus connected the call, put it on speaker, and propped the phone up on a little stand in the middle of the patio table. Everyone gathered around, holding up their drinks. Her dad appeared on the screen, gray hair, confident smile, clearly in good spirits. To Marcus and Amelia, he said, "You two are building something great. I'm so proud of you both." There were cheers and laughter. Then, as the screen panned to capture more of the party, his face changed. He squinted, leaned in, then pointed directly at the phone's camera. "Hold on, is that Evan? Evan Carter?" The crowd quieted. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, it's me." A beat passed. Then he let out a surprised laugh. "What are you doing there? Wait, why didn't anyone tell me you two were brothers?" The silence grew thick. Amelia looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Marcus froze. Her dad continued, smiling big now. "This man right here, Evan, he's the reason I have my job. His company is why my entire division exists. I tell everyone at work about him. Evan, buddy, you changed the game." You could hear a pin drop. He went on for a minute, talking about how revolutionary the software was, how the rollout saved their department, how people at the company still talk about our meetings. I nodded politely, thanked him, and finally, gently interrupted, "I appreciate that. Really? But I should get going." I set down my drink, handed my untouched plate to the stunned cousin nearest me, and walked out the gate without another word. I didn't need to hear the rest. Let them process it however they wanted. I drove home with the windows down, the night air cool against my face, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. The next morning, my phone lit up with more notifications than I'd seen in months. Missed calls, voicemails, texts from numbers I didn't even have saved. I didn't answer any of them. I just let them stack up like unread receipts from a night I never planned to remember. The first one I opened, though, was from my mom. It simply said, "Call me now." That was it. "No, are you okay?" "No, we're sorry. Just an order." Like always. I ignored it. Then came one from Marcus. "You could have said something." And then a follow-up. "Do you have any idea how that made us look?" How that made them look. That one actually made me laugh out loud. For years, I lived in the shadow of Marcus's curated image, the successful older brother, the future family patriarch, the golden boy. And now, in 10 accidental seconds on a phone screen, that illusion cracked. Not because I did anything, but because the truth slipped out, and there was no dressing it back up in a blazer and tie. By noon, Amelia texted. I didn't even know she had my number. Her message was longer. "Hey Evan, I'm really sorry about last night. I didn't realize how accomplished you were. I think some people at the party might have misunderstood your situation. You should have said something sooner. I'd love to talk, maybe grab coffee and clear the air." Clear the air. Like I'd walked in and farted instead of them spending the whole evening pretending I was beneath them. That night, I went out for a solo dinner at my favorite little Korean barbecue place. I'd been there dozens of times, alone, mostly, just to escape. The owner knew me by name, brought me my usual without even asking. As I sat there flipping meat on the grill, watching the sizzle rise, I realized something. I wasn't angry. Not in the way I used to be. Not even sad. I just felt done. Done being the quiet one. The afterthought. The lesser sibling who got humored at holidays and excluded from real family moments. But being done didn't mean disappearing. So the next day, I did what I should have done years ago. I sent out one text. To the family group chat. "Hey, just so there's no confusion, yes, I run a company. Yes, we're doing well. No, I don't owe anyone an explanation for how I got here. But since my presence at family events seems to be an occasional inconvenience, I'll make it easy. I'm stepping away from all gatherings for a while. I've spent years being spoken about like I wasn't in the room. But I am in the room now, and I've built the building. So feel free to carry on. Just without me." Delivered. Read. Silence. An hour later, my cousin Derek replied, "Respect." Then my aunt, Dad's sister, texted me privately. Said she'd watch what happened at the party over Amelia's dad's FaceTime. "The look on your mom's face," she wrote. She turned ghost white. like she'd seen a spirit crawl out of her own reflection. But the real kicker came 2 days later. I got an email from Amelia's father, a professional one, sent to my work address. He wrote, "Evan, I owe you an apology. I had no idea you were part of that family. No one mentioned it. I can't believe the way they treated you. I always say we should never judge someone by their resume, but by their results, and you've built something remarkable. If you're ever open to collaborating again, on a bigger scale this time, I'd love to schedule a meeting. No pressure, just admiration." I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I needed validation, but because, somehow, that one sentence from someone outside the family, "I can't believe the way they treated you," hit deeper than any apology from my family ever could. And then came the fallout. My mom showed up at my apartment. Not called, not texted, just knocked. When I opened the door, she was standing there in her nicest coat, holding a grocery bag like it was some kind of peace offering. "I brought your favorite, those sesame cookies," she said with a half smile. I didn't invite her in. She stood awkwardly in the hallway, rocking on her heels. "Evan, we didn't know. You never told us how big your company got." I looked her in the eyes and said, "Would it have mattered?" She blinked. "Of course it would have." I nodded slowly. "Exactly." She opened her mouth to respond, then shut it again. Her eyes shifted. "Marcus feels awful. He didn't mean to exclude you." "That's funny," I said, because I read the message. It wasn't a misunderstanding. He said it clearly. There was a pause, a long one. Then she whispered, "It's just hard sometimes, feeling like I don't know how to connect with you." That one stung. Not because it was cruel, but because it was cowardly. "You could have tried," I said quietly. Instead of laughing when they mocked me. Instead of pretending I wasn't there. She looked down. I could see her lip quiver. But I didn't move. I didn't open the door wider. I didn't hug her. I just stood there tired, but calm. "I'm not cutting you out," I said finally. "But I'm not playing this game anymore. I'm not chasing approval. If you want me in your life, it has to be as an equal, not the punchline." She nodded, blinking fast. "I understand." I don't think she did. But she left the cookies anyway. And for the first time in years, I didn't eat them. The next family event was a month later, Dad's birthday dinner. I didn't go. Marcus sent a group selfie from the table. Everyone smiling, plates full, candles glowing. I ignored it. A few minutes later, he sent a private message. "Dad misses you. Come by this weekend?" I haven't replied yet, because for once, they're reaching out. And I'm deciding whether they've earned a reply. I ended up going. Not out of guilt. Not because I missed them. I went because I wanted to look my father in the eye, one last time, and see if he even saw me. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. No birthday balloons, no extended family, just my parents, Marcus, and Amelia. I wore a navy blazer, not because I wanted to impress them, but because I knew they'd expect me to come casual, as if my life was still some thrown-together garage project. It was petty, sure, but I wanted them to feel the difference before I even spoke. Marcus opened the door. "Hey," he said, trying to sound casual, like we hadn't gone radio silent for weeks. "Glad you made it." "Sure," I replied flatly, brushing past him. Inside, Dad was sitting in his usual chair by the fireplace, sipping something dark from a heavy tumbler. He looked older than I remembered, tired, as if some of the shine he used to wear like armor had dulled. He stood when he saw me. "Evan," he said, nodding slowly. "Good to see you, son." I nodded back. "You too." Amelia gave a small wave from the kitchen, where she was plating a store-bought cake. No one spoke about the party. No one brought up what had happened. It was like we were pretending nothing had changed, only everything had. We sat around the dining table, and the meal was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that isn't peaceful, just loaded. Every clink of a fork sounded louder than it should. Every breath felt like it came with strings attached. It was only when the plates were cleared and the cake was sliced that Dad finally spoke up. "I heard you've done well for yourself." I looked at him. "You could have asked sooner." He nodded, slowly. "Maybe I should have. I guess I didn't realize," he trailed off. I waited. "I always thought Marcus had the clearer path," he said finally. "He did things the way I understood. College, job, stability. You went your own way, and I didn't know what to do with that. So you ignored it," I said, voice steady. "You dismissed it. And me." He looked me in the eye, and for a moment, I thought I saw something real. Regret, maybe, or at least recognition. "You're right," he said. "And I'm sorry. That should have been enough. That could have been enough." But Marcus couldn't leave it alone. "You know," he said, leaning back in his chair. I still think you overreacted about the party. It wasn't personal. Amelia's family just didn't know who you were. I blinked slowly. Because you made sure they didn't. He shrugged. I didn't think it mattered. No, you didn't think I mattered. Marcus leaned forward, suddenly defensive. Evan, come on. It's not like I lied about you. I just didn't make a big deal out of it. You made a point to keep me small, I snapped. You've always done that. You act like I'm some embarrassing experiment that worked out by accident. Amelia cut in, her voice quiet but sharp. Let's not turn this into a fight. I turned to her. You mocked me. To your family. Behind my back. She froze. I heard what you said. About how I never made it. About how I was a dropout. About how you were too accomplished to be around me. Her face flushed. I didn't mean it like that. But you said it. And Marcus let you. Everyone was still. I turned back to Dad. You want to know why I stopped coming around? Why I'm not at birthdays or holidays? It's not because I'm busy. It's not because I'm bitter. It's because you all made it clear I was only welcome if I played my part. The underachiever. The weird one. The one you laugh about after dinner when you think I'm not listening. No one moved. I stood up. You wanted me here? Now I've come. But this is the last time I walk into a room just to make you feel better about ignoring me. And I reached into my coat pocket and set down a white envelope. What's this? Dad asked. My company's annual gala is next month. We're hosting it at the Skyline Towers downtown. That's a VIP invite. You can come see for yourself what I've built. Or you can throw it out and go back to pretending. I turned, walked to the door. No one said a word. As I stepped out into the crisp air, I finally exhaled. Not out of relief, but closure. The next day, my assistant called. You're not going to believe this, she said. We just got a confirmation RSVP. From who? Your father. +3. The night of the gala arrived like a storm front, quiet anticipation giving way to flashes of drama and long overdue reckoning. I arrived early, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, subtle but sharp. No name tag. No introduction needed. This was my world. The event space at Skyline Towers was all polished glass and sweeping views of the city, with soft jazz playing over warm lighting. Investors, partners, and industry leaders mingled with glasses of champagne and practiced ease. I was in my element. I'd instructed the staff to treat my family like any other guests, no special fanfare, no extra attention. Let the setting speak for itself. When they arrived, the room changed. I saw them enter from across the hall, my father in a stiff black suit, my mother clinging to his arm, Marcus and Amelia just behind, both dressed like they were attending an awards show. They stood awkwardly near the registration desk until one of the assistants checked their names and gave them their access badges, VIP, same as the rest. I watched them look around, trying to make sense of it all. Then the signage caught their eye. My name, Evan Carter, printed large across the digital displays above the stage. Beneath it, founder and CEO of Nexus Systems. Amelia's jaw actually dropped. They didn't realize, not fully, that this was me. That I wasn't just doing okay. That I owned the space they were standing in. That the servers brushing past them, the musicians playing live, the curated lighting, the software demonstrations and the breakout booths, all of it was my creation. I let them wander. They saw Kali shaking my hand, laughing with me, congratulating me on our newest product launch. They watched a former Stanford professor approach me and say, "Your keynote last month was one of the best I've ever seen." They saw me smile and say, "Thanks, document. Still remember your class on scalability." And then the moment came. I took the stage. The room dimmed, and a hush fell. I didn't look at my family as I spoke, but I knew exactly where they stood, near the back, blending into the shadows, trying to make themselves small. 5 years ago, I began. This company was 3 people in a 1-bedroom apartment, eating instant noodles and fighting to make rent. No investors. No safety net. Just an idea and the will to make it real. I let that land. There were people who told us it wouldn't work, that we were wasting time, that we weren't cut out for success. But I've learned something. What others call unrealistic is often just unfamiliar to them. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It means they can't see what you see. I paused, looked out at the sea of faces. And for the first time, I did look at my family. They were still. And tonight, I continued, I want to say thank you. To the people who did believe. To those who backed us when we were nothing. Because now, we are something. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. People stood. I stepped off stage to a line of well-wishers, friends, and admirers. My family didn't approach at first. They lingered, unsure. Eventually, Dad made the first move. He walked up, slowly, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Evan," he said, voice low. That was impressive. "Thanks," I replied. I didn't smile. "I didn't realize," he said, glancing around the room, "what you built." "I know," I said simply. He swallowed. "I'm sorry." Behind him, Mom blinked rapidly. "We didn't mean to make you feel like you didn't matter," she said, voice tight. "But you did," I said. "For years." She flinched. Marcus stepped forward. "I was wrong," he said. "About everything. I was just jealous, I guess. I did things the right way, and still. I'm not where you are." I raised an eyebrow. "You're not supposed to be where I am. This was never a race." He looked down. "I made it one." Amelia said nothing, just stood beside him, frozen. I nodded slowly. "Here's the thing. I'm not angry anymore. But I'm not going to pretend none of it happened." "So what now?" Mom asked quietly. "Do we just go our separate ways?" I looked at her. "That's up to you. I'm open to starting over, but this time, on equal footing. No jabs. No backhanded compliments. No being the lesser son. I'm done playing that role." They nodded. Even Marcus. We didn't hug. Not that night. But they left early, quieter than when they came, and I watched them walk out the glass doors into the cold night. No dramatic blow-up. No shouting. Just a slow realization that the person they thought would never amount to anything had quietly become someone they'd never understand. A few weeks later, my mom texted. Just a photo. It was the old family photo from 10 years ago, the one where Marcus stood center and I was shoved to the side, barely in frame. Only this time, she cropped it differently. Centered me. Captioned, "Thinking about how proud I am." It wasn't everything, but it was something. And that's how it ends. I didn't get revenge in the way people expect. I didn't ruin anyone. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just succeeded loudly enough that silence wasn't an option anymore. And sometimes, that's the best revenge there is. It was Christmas dinner. The snow was falling gently outside, the kind of snow that makes everything look peaceful, like a Hallmark movie or something. The kind of snow that should make you feel warm and cozy inside, with the smell of roast turkey and pumpkin pie filling the air. Instead, as I sat there at the family dinner table, the warmth in the room felt suffocating. I'm Jason, 29, and for the past few years, I've been the black sheep of the family. Sure, that wasn't exactly unusual. Siblings often find their roles, right? But lately, it had gotten worse. I don't know when it all started to change, but over the last few months, it felt like everything I did just pissed off my family. No matter how hard I tried to make things work, it seemed like my family was finding new ways to make me feel like I was unwanted, like I didn't belong. It's not like I was perfect or anything, but damn, I didn't expect to be treated like this. It was my brother, Kyle, who started it all. He's the golden child, always the one who did everything right, never messed up, always had a smile on his face, and for some reason, my parents ate it all up. He could do no wrong. Kyle was the kind of guy who could walk into a room and everyone would turn to him like he was the Messiah, and I just wasn't. Over the years, I've tried to keep things civil with him, but the distance between us grew. He would make snide comments, sometimes subtle, sometimes not so much. Every time, it stung. This Christmas dinner was supposed to be different. I told myself that I wouldn't let anything get to me. It's Christmas, right? But as soon as I walked in, I could tell things weren't going to be normal. Mom was there in the kitchen, cooking like she always does, but she didn't even look up when I said hi. Dad was in his usual chair, reading the paper, giving me that polite nod, but nothing more. It was like they were all pretending that I wasn't really part of the family. And Kyle? Oh, he had that smirk. The one that always made me angry. It was after dinner, when we were all sitting around the table with dessert, that it happened. It started with some casual banter, nothing too serious, just the usual holiday chatter. I figured I could relax for once. But then Kyle leaned back in his chair, and with that damn smug grin of his, he looked at me. "Hey, Jason," he said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "We had a vote." I raised an eyebrow. "A vote? What are you talking about? You weren't here last week. So we had a family vote about, well, about you," he said, and I immediately felt a knot twist in my stomach. "What vote?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Kyle looked around the table like he was the leader of the pack, like everyone was hanging on his every word. "We voted, and you're no longer part of the family," he said, his voice a mix of amusement and cruelty. Everyone around the table laughed. My parents chuckled along with it, even though their eyes avoided mine. It felt like a sick joke, but it was real. It was happening right in front of me. My heart sank. For a moment, I couldn't process what was going on. It was like the room had shrunk down, and all the voices blurred together. The laughter was the worst part. It felt like they were all in on it, and I was the only one who didn't get the punchline. I wanted to shout, to yell at them to stop, but something inside me froze. Instead, I just nodded. I nodded because, what else was there to do? Well, that's nice, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The tension in the room grew. Kyle's grin didn't fade. You should have been here for the vote, Kyle continued. It was unanimous, you know? Everyone agreed. You're just not one of us anymore. He looked over at Mom and Dad for approval, and they both gave him a nod, like they were proud of him. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just stood up from the table. Jason, my mom said, her voice a little shaky, like she wasn't quite sure if this was a joke or not. I didn't answer. I just walked away from the table, past the faces of people I had once called family. I could feel their eyes on my back, but I didn't turn around. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my coat and pulled it on. I heard Kyle call after me, but I didn't stop. I didn't care anymore. As I reached the door, I heard my dad's voice. Jason, he said, his tone low, you're not really going to leave, are you? I paused for a moment, my fingers gripping the doorknob. I looked over my shoulder. You voted, didn't you? I said, my voice steady now, despite the storm that raged inside me. Well, I'm just honoring the vote. I opened the door and stepped outside into the cold, the winter air cutting through me like a knife. The door slammed shut behind me, and for a second, I stood there in the snow, not sure what to do. My breath was visible in the cold, and everything felt so surreal. How had it come to this? How had they all turned against me like this? I walked away from the house, from the laughter, from the pain. I didn't look back. But then something hit me. I'd been kicked out, sure. But I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to just let them treat me like I didn't matter, like I was some disposable thing that could just be voted out. No, I wasn't going to take that. I would make them realize what they had done. I spent the next few days in a haze, walking through the motions of life without really feeling it. My phone buzzed with messages, mostly from my parents, and a few from friends who somehow found out about the whole situation, but I ignored them. They could try to apologize or explain, but nothing would change. I didn't want to deal with any of it right away, but the anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface. It wasn't just the insult of being kicked out of the family that hurt. It was the years of being ignored, belittled, and disregarded. Years of being the one who was left out of family decisions, who was treated like a problem rather than a person. But now, they crossed a line. I spent a few days with my close friend, Tyler, who had always been there for me. He let me vent, but he also gave me a reality check. Look, man, you can't just let them get away with this, he said one evening while we were sitting on his couch, the TV muted. But you have to do it the right way. You can't just walk in and start yelling, or you'll be giving them exactly what they want. It stung to hear the truth, but I knew Tyler was right. If I just lashed out at them, it would give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose my cool. They already saw me as the problem, the angry one. If I wanted to show them how serious I was, I had to play it smart. Over the next few weeks, I started formulating a plan. I wasn't going to burn bridges, at least not yet, but I would make them realize how much I'd been undervalued. The first thing I did was stop reaching out. No more calls, no more messages. I didn't even bother to answer when they called. I wanted them to feel the absence. I wanted them to experience what it felt like to be ignored, to be treated like I was nothing. The next step was to take control of what I had left. I started putting together a small but effective network of people who actually cared about me. Tyler was on the front lines, of course, but there were a few other close friends, and even some distant relatives who'd always been more supportive. I gathered them all together for a few dinners, game nights, and outings, things that were a stark contrast to the cold, isolated feeling I had grown accustomed to at my family's gatherings. I posted about it, too. Nothing flashy, just casual photos of me laughing with friends, enjoying life without the constant tension of my family's judgment. It wasn't a statement, at least not to anyone who didn't know the context, but to my family? To them, it was a message. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. My parents invited me to a family meeting. The text came on a random Wednesday afternoon, and my heart skipped when I read it. I didn't even think twice before responding with a simple, "I'm not interested." They tried again, this time calling me, but I just let it ring out. By then, I had a plan in mind. A few days later, Kyle reached out to me. I wasn't sure how he'd gotten my new number, but there it was, his name flashing on my screen. I didn't answer, but after a few missed calls, he sent a message. "We need to talk. You're being childish." I couldn't help but laugh. If only he knew what I was actually up to. But instead of responding directly, I texted back, "I'm busy." For the first time in years, I felt in control. I wasn't just reacting to their treatment of me, I was making them react to me. The real kicker came a week later when Kyle, in all his smug glory, posted a picture of the whole family at a dinner. There they were, all sitting together, laughing like nothing had changed. They were all posing for the camera, wearing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. It was the kind of photo you see on social media, where everything looks perfect, but you can tell something is off. I stared at the picture for a while, a strange sense of calm washing over me. They'd already made their move. Now it was my turn. The next day, I set up a meeting with a local lawyer, someone I knew through a friend. I didn't need to make a legal case just yet, but I was preparing myself for the long game. It was clear to me now that I wasn't just going to sit back and let them forget about me. I needed leverage. I needed to make sure they knew they couldn't just erase me from the family. 2 weeks later, the Christmas incident was still fresh, but I wasn't done. I arranged a family dinner, one I'd host myself. It took a bit of planning, and I'd kept it low-key, but I invited everyone: Mom, Dad, Kyle, and even some extended family. At first, it felt weird to be the one reaching out, but I was playing a bigger game now. It wasn't about patching things up. No, it was about getting the last word. The night arrived, and when everyone gathered around the table, I could see the surprise in their eyes. Kyle was the first to speak up. "This is unexpected," he said, eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" I smiled, keeping my tone neutral. "Just thought we could have a decent meal together." The tension was palpable as we sat down, but I could feel the weight of the situation on my shoulders. I wasn't sure what they expected, but I wasn't backing down. I was finally the one in control. But then, after we had started eating, and the awkward silence filled the room, something unexpected happened. Kyle stood up and raised his glass. "To family," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. I knew this was the moment to strike. It was time for them to see the true cost of what they had done. "I think you've had enough," I said calmly, raising my own glass. Kyle looked confused, and so did my parents. "What are you talking about?" he asked. "You wanted to vote me out," I said, slowly, carefully. "Well, I'm making my own decisions now." I stood up, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the power shift in my favor. Kyle's smirk faltered as I looked directly at him. "The vote was clear, right?" "I'm no longer part of the family," I said, my voice cold. The silence that followed was deafening, but I wasn't finished yet. I had one last thing to say, one final move. And that's when the doorbell rang. The doorbell echoed through the silence of the room, sharp and sudden. Everyone froze for a moment, eyes darting between each other as if trying to figure out what was going on. I hadn't planned for anyone else to show up. My gaze shifted to Kyle, whose smirk had evaporated entirely. His face, once filled with confidence, was now one of utter confusion and uncertainty. I walked over to the door slowly, enjoying the sense of control I hadn't felt in so long. As I opened it, the face that greeted me wasn't a relative or friend, but someone I hadn't expected. It was my lawyer. For a split second, there was a collective gasp. My parents' faces shifted from confusion to anger, but they didn't say anything. I could see the wheels turning in their heads, trying to figure out what was happening. Kyle, ever the first to speak, finally managed to get a word out. "Who is this?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I stepped aside to let the lawyer into the room, giving him a subtle nod. He stepped in, holding a briefcase, his expression calm and professional. He didn't waste time with pleasantries, just walking straight to the table and looking at my parents. "Good evening," he said, his voice clear and authoritative. "I'm here on behalf of Jason. I believe you may remember him." My father's face reddened, but it was Kyle who spoke up first, trying to mask his discomfort with sarcasm. "I don't know what this is about, but if you think we're just going to—" "Actually," the lawyer interrupted, cutting him off smoothly, "I'm here to serve you all with this." He handed my mother a thick envelope. She hesitated, staring at it as if it might bite her, before reluctantly accepting it. My father sat up straighter in his chair, tension radiating from every fiber of his being. He must have known what was coming. It was the look of someone who realized they were about to lose control. "What's going on?" my mom finally asked, her voice trembling. "I'm simply here to ensure that everyone is on the same page," the lawyer said calmly. "This is a legal notice." As of today, Jason has filed formal documentation to terminate his connection with your family's estate and any future claims or entitlements associated with it. The room went quiet. The atmosphere shifted like a thunderstorm had rolled in, the weight of everything that had happened sinking in. I could feel the tension building, an almost suffocating pressure in the air. They were all staring at me, the shock evident on their faces. "You're kidding," Kyle said, voice strained as he tried to hide the panic creeping into his tone. "You can't do this." "Actually, I can," the lawyer said smoothly, his eyes never leaving my family. "This is just the beginning. You see, there are some other documents in this envelope that pertain to other family matters. But the main point is clear. Jason has made his decision, and I'm here to ensure that everyone involved understands the legal ramifications." My mother was the first to open the envelope, her hands shaking. She skimmed over the paperwork, her face paling with every line she read. The others were trying to hide their growing panic, but it was obvious they were starting to realize just how serious I was. You can't just cut us out of your life like this," my father said, his voice growing softer, more pleading. He finally stood up from the table and took a step toward me, but I held my ground. The years of neglect and control had built up, and I wasn't about to back down. "I'm not cutting you out, Dad," I said slowly, my voice steady. "I'm just making sure you know that I won't be treated like nothing anymore. I won't let you and Kyle manipulate me or treat me like I'm disposable. The vote you had, it doesn't count. I've made my decision. I'm out. And I'm making sure you can't do anything about it." Kyle clenched his fists. "You're being dramatic. This is ridiculous." But even as he spoke, I saw the fear in his eyes. He wasn't used to being the one on the other side of the table, to seeing the power shift away from him. "No," I said, my voice firm. "This is reality. You wanted to vote me out, remember? You thought I'd just roll over and take it. But no, I'm taking control now. I'm done being the punchline in your jokes, the scapegoat for everything that goes wrong. I've got a life to live, and it's not with you." The lawyer turned to leave, his business completed. But before he could exit, my mother finally spoke up, her voice shaky but louder now. "What do you want from us? Why now? Why do this to us? Why?" I repeated, almost laughing at the absurdity of it. "Because for years, you treated me like I didn't matter. You thought I would always be here to pick up the pieces when things went wrong. But that's not how this works. You want me to be part of your family? You want to pretend like nothing happened? Fine. But there's a cost. You don't get to toss me aside and then expect me to come crawling back." I paused, letting my words sink in. Kyle, now visibly uncomfortable, shifted in his seat, clearly losing his nerve. "I've moved on," I added quietly. "And I'm not going to beg for a place at your table anymore." The room fell silent. The tension was almost unbearable. My parents were staring at me as if they couldn't recognize their own child. Kyle's face was a mixture of disbelief and frustration, his eyes darting around as if looking for a way out. I stood there, my body tense, but my heart strangely calm. I wasn't the person they had tried to force into submission anymore. I had done it. I had made the decision. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to stand up for myself. I turned to the lawyer, nodding toward the door. "Thanks for coming," I said. He gave a short nod in return and exited, leaving the weight of the moment behind him. And with that, the silence became overwhelming. My parents looked defeated, Kyle was seething, and the rest of the family, who had been quietly observing from the edges of the room, shifted uncomfortably, unsure of what to say. I took a deep breath. This wasn't the end, but it was a turning point. The ball was in their court now. The question was whether they would finally realize the consequences of their actions or continue down the same path. As I stood there, looking at them, I knew that I had taken the first real step toward my freedom. But the story wasn't over yet. The real question was what would happen next. Would they accept it? Or would they try to pull me back into their toxic web? I couldn't wait to find out. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. My parents stared at the documents as if they could somehow will them out of existence. Kyle's face was twisted with disbelief, like he was trying to figure out how the power had slipped from his hands. The rest of the family, those who had gone along with the joke, who had laughed as they voted me out, shifted uncomfortably in their seats, suddenly unsure where they stood. Then, my mother did what she always did when she felt cornered. She tried to manipulate me. "Honey," she said softly, folding her hands together as if she was the victim here. "Let's not be hasty. We're family. You can't just walk away from us over a joke." I let out a breath of laughter. "A joke?" I repeated, shaking my head. "That's funny, Mom, because it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like the moment you all finally said out loud what you'd been thinking for years, that I don't belong here. That's not true, she insisted, but there was no conviction in her voice. You don't get to decide that anymore, I said, cutting through her weak protest. For years, I've let you all treat me like an outsider in my own family. I let Kyle walk all over me. I let Dad ignore me unless he needed something. And I let you guilt trip me into staying, even when I knew I deserved better. But that ends today. Kyle scoffed, rolling his eyes. So what? You're just going to cut off your family forever? Over this? His voice dripped with condescension, but I could see the cracks forming in his bravado. He wasn't in control anymore, and he hated it. I met his gaze head on. Yes, I said simply. That's exactly what I'm doing. My father, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. You think you can just erase us? Family is family. You'll come crawling back one day. He said it like a fact, like it was inevitable. But he didn't know me at all. I took a deep breath, letting their words bounce off me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the final confirmation that I was making the right choice. I won't, I said, my voice steady. You made sure of that. You all decided I wasn't part of this family before I ever made this decision. I'm just making it official. I turned toward the door, feeling lighter than I had in years. My lawyer had already left, but he had done his part. The paperwork was filed, and soon, I would be legally free from any financial or familial obligations to them. No inheritance ties, no legal claims. Nothing. Kyle, realizing that I was serious, stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. You're a coward, he spat. You think you're better than us? You'll fail on your own. You'll come crawling back, begging for help. I turned back, looking him dead in the eye. If cutting out toxicity makes me a coward, then fine, I said. But at least I'm free. Enjoy your little kingdom, Kyle. I hope it was worth losing a brother. With that, I walked out the door. I didn't look back. The weeks that followed were eerily quiet. At first, my parents tried to call, then text, then send emails, each message shifting between fake concern and outright anger. I ignored every single one. Kyle, predictably, tried a different tactic. He sent messages taunting me, trying to get a rise out of me. I didn't respond. Then the messages stopped altogether. A month later, I heard through a mutual friend that Kyle was struggling. Without me around to take the blame for everything, the cracks in the family dynamic were starting to show. My parents had started putting pressure on him instead, expecting him to pick up the slack now that I was gone. It turned out that being the golden child wasn't so golden when there was no scapegoat left. As for me, I moved forward. I got an apartment in a new city, started focusing on my own life, and surrounded myself with people who actually cared about me. And for the first time in my life, I was truly happy. Because I wasn't just free from them. I was free. My name's Liam, I'm 31, and if there's one thing I've learned about family, it's that they'll cheer for you the loudest, unless your success makes them uncomfortable. I never went the traditional route. While most of my cousins were off at university studying law or medicine or whatever would earn them a LinkedIn badge and a parental bragging right, I was holed up in my childhood bedroom, building an e-commerce brand out of thin air. At first, it was just selling custom phone cases, then t-shirts. Then it snowballed. While they were submitting resumes and praying for internships, I was filing taxes for an LLC and managing 6 figures in inventory. But to my extended family, I was still between jobs. That's how my mom described it. That's how I was introduced at weddings and reunions. This is Liam, he's figuring things out. As if my business wasn't real until someone in a suit said it was. The graduation party that broke the camel's back was for my cousin Mallory. She was 23, freshly graduated from some prestigious university with a degree in international relations, and the golden girl of the family. You know the type: class president, speaks 3 languages, volunteers at shelters, somehow manages to look like a Disney princess in every photo. I never had a problem with her growing up, to be honest. We were civil. Not close, but not hostile either. But Mallory always had this air about her, like she expected the world to applaud after every sentence. Her parents, my aunt and uncle, fueled it. Every little achievement came with a party, a framed certificate, a group text, and a Facebook album with a name like Mallory's Big Moment. When I got the invitation to her graduation party, I already knew what to expect. A catered backyard event at their place in the suburbs, probably with string lights, champagne, and an overpriced tent rental. What I didn't expect was the role I'd be given when I arrived. I pulled up a little early to avoid the usual chaos, only to be immediately intercepted by Aunt Kara, Mallory's mom, waving a fluorescent vest like I'd just clocked in for a shift. Oh, perfect. Liam, we were hoping you could help with the parking situation. We've got cars backing up down the street. No hello. No, thanks for coming. Just a vest, a walkie-talkie, and a pat on the back like I was some college freshman working valet on the weekends. I blinked at her. I'm not working the party, Kara. I came to celebrate. She laughed like I'd made a joke. Just help us out for an hour or so. You're good with logistics, right? Your little online thing? I should have walked away then. I should have handed her the vest and said no. But something in me, probably that cursed family loyalty, made me take it. I spent the first 90 minutes of that party waving SUVs into grass patches and helping elderly relatives shuffle their walkers over uneven ground. No one relieved me. No one brought me a drink. When I finally sat down at one of the fold-out tables near the back, sweaty and dust-covered, the actual celebration was already in full swing. There was a massive banner stretched across the yard, "Congrats, Mallory," in glittery gold. A red bow was tied around the driveway gate, which had apparently been hiding a brand new Kia Soul. Guests were crowded around the cake table, sipping drinks and eating. I got a half-hearted wave from my mom, who was seated front and center like she'd raised Mallory herself. I spotted my name scrawled on a paper place card shoved behind a decorative fern near the buffet line, far from the main tables. Mallory was glowing. She wore a white dress that caught the light with every movement, and she floated from table to table like she was running for office. At one point, a microphone was passed to her, and she tapped it dramatically before giving a little giggle. "I just want to thank everyone for coming," she began, holding her champagne flute high. "It means so much to be surrounded by people who value hard work and real education, especially in a time where it's so easy to get distracted by online hobbies." She smiled directly at me. The pause was intentional. The delivery, razor sharp. And the reaction? Laughter. Actual laughter. My uncle snorted. My cousin Jason spit out a sip of his drink. Even my mom gave a tight, embarrassed smile like she'd been caught trying not to laugh but couldn't help herself. I felt the heat rise up my neck. I stared at the condensation dripping down my untouched drink, willing myself not to react. "Not yet," Mallory continued, oblivious or maybe just bold. "Some of us spent 4 years earning a degree that actually means something. Sorry, not sorry." More laughter. She clinked glasses with a few nearby guests and handed the mic back like a drop-the-mic moment from a teen drama. My mom looked over at me finally, gave a little shrug, and mouthed, "She didn't mean it." The thing is, I didn't care about the car. I didn't care about the banner or the speech or the fact that every single photo being snapped had me cropped out in the background, standing near the hedge like a forgotten waiter. What stung was the years of quiet dismissals, the smirks when I tried to explain my work, the way my own mother would breeze past my updates to talk about which of Mallory's professors used to work in the State Department. But in that moment, sitting there with dust on my sneakers and a drink in my hand, something inside me shifted. I waited until the last toast had been made, until the clapping died down and people began migrating toward the dance floor where a Bluetooth speaker played top 40 hits. I stood, brushed off my pants, and made my way up to the main table where Mallory and her friends were posing for photos beside the car, still high off applause. "Hey, Mallory," I said, casually, loud enough for the nearby crowd to hear. She turned, mid-laugh, clearly not expecting me to speak. "Yeah?" she asked, eyes narrowed. I lifted my glass and smiled. "Just wanted to say congrats." "Really? Must feel great knowing your degree got you here. And it's awesome that your family supports you so much." I took a long sip. My little online hobby just cleared $1.2 million this year. But hey, nice Kia. Silence. Mallory's smile froze. Someone behind her dropped a fork. My uncle's mouth fell open. My mom blinked twice like she couldn't process the words. I didn't wait for their reactions to settle. I just nodded, turned on my heel, and walked off toward the gate. The last thing I heard was someone whisper, "Wait, what did he say?" And I had no intention of sticking around for what came next. As I walked down the gravel driveway toward my car, I could feel all the stairs drilling into my back like heat lamps. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I'd played my part. I'd said what I needed to say, and I knew that little mic drop moment would ripple through the party like a pebble in still water. The thing is, I hadn't planned to say anything. I really hadn't. But years of being the family's quiet afterthought, the one who got the short end of the conversation and the long list of favors, had finally stacked up. And Mallory's smug little jab? That was the final straw. When I slid into my car and pulled out, no one came chasing after me. Not yet. But by the time I got home, Parked in front of my place, a sleek 3-bedroom house I'd bought outright last year, my phone had already begun buzzing. First came the texts. One from my mom, that was uncalled for. Liam, you embarrassed the whole family. Followed immediately by another. We'll talk later. Please don't make a big deal out of this. Then from Aunt Kara, was that really necessary? Mallory worked hard for her degree. You're not the only one with accomplishments. I didn't reply. I powered down my phone, tossed it on the kitchen counter, and let the silence of my house wash over me. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The fallout came in waves over the next few days. Monday morning, I opened my business email to find 3 new interview requests. Apparently, one of Mallory's guests had looked up my company after the party and was beyond impressed with what we'd built. Built, not fell into. Not your little online thing. That word meant something to me. A month ago, I might have passed the requests off to my assistant. But now, I took the calls myself. For once, I wanted people to hear my story. Tuesday evening, my mom showed up at my door. She didn't text first, just rang the bell, holding a Tupperware container like this was still 2006 and I was a college kid who needed lasagna and life advice. I opened the door slowly. Hey, she said, a bit too softly. I brought dinner. I stepped aside, motioning her in. She hovered in the entryway, I scanning the living room like she was seeing it for the first time. The minimalist furniture, the local art pieces, the smart lighting, all of it screaming success in a language she'd never really bothered to learn. You've done well for yourself, she said, finally. Yeah, I said. I have. She set the Tupperware on the counter and sighed. You embarrassed Mallory. And the whole family. She's devastated. I folded my arms, leaning against the kitchen island. Mom, she mocked me. Publicly. I didn't start anything. I finished it. But $1.2 million? She said it like it was a sin. Like saying it aloud might summon some IRS demon. It's the truth. She paused, jaw tight. Why didn't you ever tell me? I laughed, not unkindly. I did. You just never wanted to hear it. You liked the version of me that needed help. That fit into your little narrative, Liam the dropout, the one still figuring things out. You could pity me. But I stopped needing that a long time ago. She sat down heavily, like my words knocked the wind out of her. I wasn't trying to pity you, she said quietly. No. I asked. Then why was it always Mallory so driven? And I was just the kid who makes stickers in his room. She didn't have an answer for that. Instead, she said, Mallory's looking for a job, you know. Nothing's come through yet. I smiled tightly. So the real degree didn't open every door after all? That earned me a scowl. Don't be cruel. I'm not. I'm just tired of pretending I haven't earned my place in this family. She stood up, brushing invisible crumbs off her blouse. She wants to apologize, she mumbled. Does she? I raised an eyebrow. She said she went too far. I didn't reply. Because I didn't believe it. Not yet. Later that night, I checked my phone for the first time since Saturday. A text from Mallory sat there, unread. Hey. About the party, I shouldn't have said what I said. That was messed up. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was unsure of what to do, but because the power dynamic had shifted. And suddenly, everyone knew it. For years, they thought I was the guy scraping by with Wi-Fi and a dream. No, I was the guy who built an empire while they weren't looking. But the real moment things truly spiraled came the following weekend. Aunt Kara called me directly. No warning. Just a voicemail. Liam, I need to talk to you about something important. We've run into a bit of a financial situation. I didn't want to bring this up, but your uncle's hours got cut, and the lease on Mallory's new car isn't exactly manageable. I know things got tense, but we're still family, right? That's when it clicked. They weren't just embarrassed. They wanted something. I played the voicemail twice. Not because I needed to hear what she said again, but because I couldn't believe how quickly the tone had changed. Just days earlier, I'd been the family joke in a vest waving cars into grass patches. Now I was the emergency exit. I didn't call Aunt Kara back right away. I didn't even respond. I let it sit. Let her wonder if I'd heard it. Let the discomfort grow. I knew this pattern. It was familiar. First the mockery, then the silence, then the sudden warmth and "we're still family" line as soon as they needed a favor. And make no mistake, this was a favor. An expensive one. I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and pulled up Mallory's Instagram. She'd posted a carousel of pictures from the party. The banner, the speeches, the keys to her new car. Captioned with, "To new beginnings and real work that makes a difference." Right. Real work. That phrase again. I scrolled through the comments. Dozens of likes from extended family members, friends, old classmates. A few of them tagged her saying how inspiring she was. One of them even commented, "Can't wait to work with you at the embassy." That made me smirk. I knew for a fact Mallory hadn't landed a single job offer yet. Not because she told me, but because my mom had accidentally let it slip while she was half defending her in my kitchen. The girl who toasted to real degrees and mocked online hobbies was now 3 months into post-grad unemployment and clearly sweating it. Still, I wasn't planning on doing anything. I wasn't out for blood. Not yet. But then came the second call. This one was from my uncle. "Liam, hey, just wanted to clear the air, but you know we love you. Always have. That whole party thing? Just some playful teasing. Mallory's got a sharp sense of humor, huh? Takes after her dad." He chuckled awkwardly. "Anyway, look, about that lease. Kara mentioned she left you a message. We're just a little tight this month. Would really mean a lot if you could float us the first couple payments, just to keep things smooth while Mallory settles in. I mean, you did say your business was doing well, right?" I sat there in stunned silence, holding my phone like it was a live grenade. The audacity was almost artistic. Not a single mention of the years I'd spent quietly footing bills for birthday gifts, holiday dinners, or family emergencies while they offered me folding chairs and backhanded compliments. Not a single acknowledgement that what Mallory said was cruel, not teasing, not playful, not just a joke. No apology. Just more entitlement. Just more of the same. That's when I opened the spreadsheet. The one I'd kept for years. Not obsessively, just methodically. Every dollar I'd ever lent or spent on this family. From the $300 I gave Jason for textbooks he never paid back, to the $2,000 I floated Kara and her husband when their roof started leaking 2 winters ago. Every favor I've been guilt into. Every bill I paid quietly just to keep the peace. The grand total? $42,860. $42,860. Not counting interest. Not counting emotional labor. Not counting the way they made me feel like a glorified piggy bank with no real accomplishments. I stared at the number for a long time. Then I took a deep breath and started drafting a message. To Mallory. "Hey, got your text. Been thinking about it. Appreciate the apology, but I've been thinking maybe it's time for some clarity. For everyone's sake. You're right, by the way. You did work hard. I just don't think that justifies mocking other people's success, especially when you don't fully understand it. But more than that, I'm realizing that I've spent years investing in this family, financially and emotionally, and all I've really gotten in return is dismissiveness. I'm not angry, but I'm done playing the role of the invisible ATM. I wish you luck on the job hunt. Really, but I won't be covering the car or anything else going forward." I read it twice. No venom, no gloating, just a line in the sand. Then I sent a version of that message to my uncle, my aunt, and more delicately to my mom. She called instantly. "Liam, wait, can we talk about this? You can't just—" "Yes," I interrupted, calm and clear. "I can. And I just did." There was a pause on the other end of the line. For the first time, she didn't have a script. Didn't know what to say. "Did you really make over $1 million last year?" "Yes." "How?" "You never asked." Another long silence. "What do you want us to do?" she asked, her voice low. And that question sat with me for a moment. Because that was the thing, wasn't it? I didn't want them to do anything. I just wanted them to stop expecting me to do everything. I ended the call without another word. Not out of spite, but because for once, I didn't owe anyone a performance. The mask was off. The bank was closed. And the joke of the family had finally spoken. Mallory didn't respond to my message for 2 days. I figured she was either stewing, crafting some faux gracious reply, or too embarrassed to say anything at all. Honestly, I didn't care. I'd said my piece. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for years, the guilt, the obligation, the constant feeling of being seen but never valued, was finally gone. For the first time in forever, I felt light. Then, on the 3rd day, I got a calendar invite. Subject, coffee. From Mallory Summers. Time, Saturday, 10 a.m. Location, Cafe Alder, downtown. I stared at it for a while, debating whether to decline. But part of me was curious. I accepted, not because I expected some heartfelt apology, but because I wanted to look her in the eye and see what, if anything, was real underneath all that polished superiority. Saturday morning rolled around gray and rainy. Fitting, I thought. I arrived 10 minutes early and ordered a black coffee. No frills. No distractions. She walked in 5 minutes late, wearing a cream blazer, heels, and a face full of carefully curated humility. Even in a downpour, Mallory dressed like someone who expected a spotlight. "Liam," she said with a small smile, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thanks for coming." "Didn't think you'd show," I replied calmly. "Neither did I," she admitted. "But here we are." We sat in silence for a beat. She stirred her latte like it was an art project. "I read your message," she finally said. "Twice." "Okay. And you're right." I raised an eyebrow. "I was awful," she continued. "Not just at the party. For years. I made fun of your work because I didn't understand it. And because, if I'm being honest, I was jealous. That caught me off guard." "Jealous?" I echoed. "Yeah," she said, not meeting my eyes. "You found your thing. You made it work. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here with a shiny degree, 0 job offers, and a car my parents can't afford. That joke I made at the party? It was less about you and more about me. Trying to feel better about where I'm not." I let her words settle. I didn't rush to forgive. I wasn't even sure I wanted to. "I appreciate you saying that," I said, slow and deliberate. "But that doesn't undo years of jabs. Of being treated like I was less than. By everyone. Including my own mother." "I know," she whispered. "That's on me. And them. All of us." I nodded, eyes fixed on the rain sliding down the window beside us. "Why did you really ask me here, Mallory?" She bit her lip. "Not for money. I swear." "Good. Because that door is closed." She nodded quickly. "I know. I didn't come to ask for help. I wanted to own it. Publicly." I looked at her, confused. "Publicly." That's when she reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She opened her Instagram app, turned the screen toward me, and hit record on a story. "Hi everyone," she said, smiling awkwardly into the camera. "So, this is a little uncomfortable, but it's time I say something." I sat frozen as she continued recording. "At my graduation party last week, I made a pretty nasty comment about online businesses and people who work outside the traditional system. It was petty, cruel, and frankly, completely inaccurate. My cousin Liam is one of the most driven, successful people I know. He built his business from scratch, with no handouts and no shortcuts, and I publicly belittled him for it. That's on me. And I'm sorry. Not just to him, but to anyone I influenced with that attitude. Real success doesn't come with a diploma, it comes with effort. And Liam, if you're watching this, thank you for calling me out. I needed it." She stopped the video, posted it without hesitation, and slid the phone back into her purse. I blinked. "That was unexpected." She shrugged. "I deserve to be embarrassed. You were for years. It's only fair." For the first time in a long time, I saw her not as Mallory the Golden Girl, but just a young woman trying to untangle herself from the image her family built around her. And maybe, from the one she built around herself. "You're lucky I'm not a petty man," I said with a small smile. She smirked. "Don't push it." We talked for another hour. Not about money or careers or family politics, just about life. Travel. Books. The little things we'd never shared because we were always too busy competing or avoiding each other. When we finally stood up to leave, she hugged me. Not a half pat on the back hug, but a real one. A quiet one. The kind that says, "I get it now." A week later, my mom called. "You saw the video?" she asked hesitantly. I did. She didn't even tell us she was posting it. She didn't need to. "I'm proud of you," she said, voice thick with something close to guilt. "And I'm sorry for how I talked about your work, for not listening, for not asking." I didn't gloat. I didn't say finally. I just said, "Thank you." The next family event came a month later. It was a 4th of July cookout at Uncle Rob's house. I showed up in jeans and a polo, same as always. But this time, I didn't get handed a vest or asked to fix the ice machine. Instead, Mallory walked over, handed me a plate loaded with food, and said, "You're sitting with me." And I did. There was no speech, no banner, no toast. Just laughter, stories, and a weird sense of balance I hadn't felt in years. When someone asked what I did for a living, Mallory was the one who jumped in. He runs a multi-7-figure brand online. It's actually insane. You should see his setup. The silence that followed was beautiful. No snorts. No smirks. Just impressed nods and follow-up questions. I answered a few, smiled politely, and kept the rest to myself. Because now, they wanted to know. And for once, I didn't need them to. The Kia was eventually returned. Mallory took a job at a nonprofit doing real work that mattered to her, not her parents. Aunt Kara and Uncle Rob stopped calling me for handouts. My mom still doesn't understand everything I do, but now she brags about me like I invented the internet. I still keep that spreadsheet, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder of where I came from and what I no longer owe. They say success is the best revenge. I say clarity is better. And silence, after all that noise, is the sweetest sound of all.